Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou. Nau mai, haere mai, ki tēnei hui te kaunihira o Whangarei District e te taite o Hakatia, Te Kaumā Ono. So welcome to our council meeting for Thursday, the 16th of December. Ka tono ahau kia kai kaunihira Beni, kia whakatū wherahia o tātou hui me te karakia. Kia ora.
Kia Kia hora te marina, kia whakapapa o namu te moana. Hei huarahi ma tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātou e a tātou katoa. May peace be widespread. May the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all to this day. Give love, receive love. Let us show respect for each other.
Kia ora, Councillor Henry. Ai tāhi o te reo Māori. Councillors, a reminder for any items on the agenda today for which you may have an interest, you can declare those at the, as we come to them. We have an apology today from Deputy Mayor Innes, and can I have a mover that apology be received? Councillor Golightly and Councillor Benny. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. I'll just run through a little bit of housekeeping before I commence into the public forum. We do have some amended resolutions for some of the items that will come through, and I'll highlight those as we get to them. And there is a supplementary report, the annual report for item 7.11.1, the supplementary report for the annual report and summary annual report. We also have 7.11.2, there are some amended documents, and they've been pre-circulated to elected members prior to the meeting. And of course we have a supplementary item which we'll cover at the end of the meeting as well. So item 7.12, civic precinct landscaping. So that brings us to item 4 of our agenda, which is the public forum. And we have the pleasure this morning of welcoming Dr. Kevin Moore, Cam Matheson and Ara Bartlett, who will be presenting to their public forum, which in the agenda is support for a charitable youth education trust. We have had some information pre-distributed. Hopefully you've had a chance to have a quick read about that. But it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning. And if you wouldn't mind coming forward to the area where we've got set aside, and because we'd like to be able to hear you, I'm going to give you permission to take your mask off so that we can, for those of you like me who rely on being able to see people's mouths move, to hear properly. And I believe you also have a PowerPoint presentation. So it's great to have you in the council chamber today. Very warm welcome. Over to you.
Welcome. We're here to tell you about a really positive and vibrant part of the Whangarei community that you might not know much about. There are hundreds of teenagers involved, there's dozens of adults, and it results in really crazily employable teenagers. Who's heard of question research labs? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, not many of you, which is sad because it's such a great thing in our community. We're an ideas incubator for experiments in science, design, technology. Some years ago it was called Techno Hackers, and it's evolved over time. we have, in the lab at the moment, we have these groups going. There's 6 different formal groups and lots more informal activities going on. Robotics on Wednesday, there's coding and design on Thursday for the young ones, there's separate groups for girls, science and technology, questionable projects, so this is a teenage, very eclectic, anything goes project group for teens. At the moment, we've got about 100 different youth every week attending, and it's way more than that because a lot of them attending multiple events. Over the year, we've had 4,500 people come into our venue, and there's about 3,500 volunteer hours this year so far. This is a really kind of active piece of your community that you don't know about. But it's free to attend. It's really important. We really want to keep our barriers to entry really low, and it's supported completely by patronage. People who can afford it become patrons and support us, and we have no other source of funding. That's our completely how we've existed. We started in 2015, which is quite a while ago. Tiki Panga, a rugby club, just a little coding group, and then here we are in the main room where we need a bit more sort of an in-town environment. We outgrew spaces pretty quickly. Here we are in the Whangarei club space, kids involved in projects. And we even really outgrew the Whangarei Club hall. We've had team, as I said, we've also run groups at Whangarei Girls High School. These ones here at university now. 2021, this year, magic happened. What happened is we were provided with a space, a physical space that we could set up and run completely as ourselves. A nice 400 square metre building in Rathbone Street, Manawa building, the ground floor. And what this means is we could expand, we could run more groups. We can see here is the science group. Give you some idea of the space we've got there, some various things going on in the background in our space. We've run all sorts of different events over time, and there's all sorts of crazy activities that go from design to robotics, electronics, and more slides. We even camped in the lab. We've got a cool community here. That was good. We're involved in the New Zealand 48-hour short film festival. We have an entry there, 28 teens and youth involved in doing a short film.
Not a flattering photo.
And these kids have developed some just amazing skills. Girls group. And we've got a relationship with the I Have a Dream group as well, as we've got kids coming in from I Have a Dream. And that's meant we can do all of this stuff, but more. There's actually a lot more going on in the lab. In fact, if you go down any time at the moment, there's going to be kids in there, adults in there, doing work from homework to working on their projects. They could be coding, design, you name it, they'll be in there. Fantastic, vibrant place. We've also, here we are, a bunch of teams. We also take them down to Auckland to compete in competitions at Auckland University. A group of our teams competing in the 48-hour game development competition. And they do amazingly well. Like, they got first in creative design, first in team management.
Was that also Biggest Disaster?
Oh yeah, they also won Biggest Disaster, the most proud of Biggest Disaster. That's all the screening that happened. They're developing a prototype VR game that had a TENS muscle machine, attached electrodes, and as you played it, you feel the gun kick when you played in this VR horror game, but they had spiders that were fighting, and the spiders attacked you, actually hit and hurt. And imagine the development of this as a little on screen. We've competed in international data science competitions, and once again done really well and had highly commended awards from Datacom and other companies. I had another game development competition working down this is down at the engine room space. And it's a chance for crazy, like-minded kids to be with also really exciting, interesting kids as well. Entrepreneurial activities, a whole bunch of entrepreneurial things that have sprung up, even in our youngest little group, age group. Got a selling robot making kits. We've run big events, robot making workshop here. We had 60 people in the Whangarei Boys Hall making all sorts of work in a single day from scratch, learning how to make and build a robot, a crazy autonomous little robot. So I better come back to my notes here. So this is not sports. Ooh.
I know this, isn't that mean?
It's not sports, it's not arts, but it's something that produces really amazingly interesting kids. So I go back one. Other events we've done, but here's the key, and this is my call out to you guys, but we need a permanent space. So we've demonstrated there's huge demand in the community for this sort of stuff. We're unknown, and it's like building a dam and filling. There's huge demand in the community for this, but we are losing our space at the end of January, and we have nowhere to go. We've worked really hard to try and find another space, but we don't have the depth of relationships needed at the moment because we've just run ourselves independently for this whole time. We need help to find a space. This is a big thing in the community, and it's not even tapping what it could be. Actually, I'll let you.
Oh, okay, thank you. This is very intimidating. Well, just some notes here. In a society that is becoming more and more reliant on technology, computer literacy is one of the most important skills a person will need. Questionable Research Labs provides a foundation for those skills. It's a place where kids can learn to program in an environment that is open and fun. They learn to design robots and then build those robots themselves, giving kids and teens a passion for technology and design and just making things. But we can't do that without a place to operate. A sort of home base rather than just feel employment. And Whangarei has a significant lack of technology-based clubs, and Questionable Research Labs is one of the first of its kind. I think it's important that Whangarei encourages these tech communities like ours so that we can help our wider community reach its digital strategy growth goals.
Now, our kids, we contribute enormously already to the community's social and economic development. Over the summer here, I can think of 3 different technology startups that our kids, our teens who are so skilled, are working on. 2 national companies that are now doing software development for. This is just our teenagers over their summer holiday. These are brilliant kids in such a great, playful learning environment, but we don't want to lose it, and we don't know where to go. So, help.
Wow. I am aware of the time constraint, but I know that you've got 14 very excited people about the presentation that you've, 13 plus now. It is unfortunate that we won't be able to respond directly to you today, but what you've done is you've sparked interest and created the thought process and the networks that we have. You've done absolutely that you've done the right thing to come to us, because there may just be someone who knows someone who can help. And crazily employable, that expression will be forever etched in my brain. Thank you for bringing this to us, because we didn't know, I don't know what I don't know, and what you've done is you've shown us what's going on in our community, which gives us hope for the future, I have to say. Are there any questions? Councillor Bernard?
Yes, I was just going to thank you, that was awesome, and I can sort of tell that we're all sort of pretty engaged in it, and we actually do what I would like to sort of hear more. But just talking about you're looking for a new space, is that kind of like are you looking for like a subsidised space or a rent-free space? Like, can you give me
because we run free and it's completely volunteer and our funds are really limited, we need cheap space. So what we've done, this current space is between the tenant moving out and the building redeveloped. We just take it over and do our thing. We can grow to whatever size. We've got 400 square metres and we fully utilise that space. Our long-term goal is a permanent space where we have a commercial kitchen, we have workshop space, teaching space, general social space. So our long-term goal is to have a really decent community resource But to get there is going to be a long path. But at the moment, we just need somewhere to live. And this room can be quite big. It's a bit small, but one around.
It would be pretty like that to be my guess.
You're welcome to it. Councillor Peters.
Sorry, I think you've answered most of my questions. It was about it's about the I've already gone looking and haven't been able to find anything free yet, but I'm really keen. And if there are any constraints, it would be really good if you could let us know. Do they need to have power plugs or blah, 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 all that sort of stuff?
We are very we are very resourceful, and we could use a warehouse, we could use an empty space, we have the skills and the people involved and the friends involved to make use of even a rougher space. What we just need is that sort of space.
Thank you. Councillor Cockburn, will you pass the captain?
How you going again? All good? It was a while since you've been at the Whangarei Club, but questions I was more after was, do you have a lot of stats? We know how I love stats.
Yep.
About demographics and things like that, because when it comes to funding agencies, those are big things that no one always asks for. So you've got some of those in place to do. Cool.
We free data aware people, so the kids built a membership management tool that really logs himself in and scans their vaccines.
Cool. And then one of the other things is you've got a lot of kids doing robotics and things like that, doing programming during the holiday time. Where are they going from here? So the ones that have actually left, what's happening to them?
When I look at our teams at the moment, we've got kids that are down at university doing everything from astrophysics to teaching to mechanical engineering, chemistry, electrical engineering, computer science, psychology, graphic design, media studies. So our kids go on, and actually a couple of our kids have come back up to work for a robotics company up here over the summer. So our kids just have fantastic skills and real demand. But yes, they take off and do good things.
But they always come back as well.
Well, they don't always come back. My dream is I don't want people to stay in Whangarei. The world's a big place. And you want to go out and come back and read, come back and come back and do and do stuff later on. You need that big world experience. And already we're seeing returning and coming back and returning.
Thanks. No, it's great. I just wondered if the gear that you're using at the moment, the laptops, etc., and the desks, is that stuff that you own, or is it
yes,
stuff?
Yes, that's stuff that we've acquired over time. It's been dated, we've built, we've collected, so all our resources are out now.
So are you a legal entity?
We're a charitable trust.
Okay.
And incorporated trust charitable.
So you can apply for funding?
Yes, we can.
And you are?
We have just got to this point.
Okay.
I mean, we're bootstrapping ourselves as we go. We have this mind, so it's getting there.
All right, good. We'll make contact with our community development people.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Any other questions, Councillor Clark?
It's fantastic what you guys do and how you've grown up to where it is now. And also, if I was kind of a school-age kid, that would be one of the first places I would have come. With the patronage, as you're saying, how much it costs, well, if it's free, but then you get people paying. What's the division, or what is the percentage of people paying to?
This is something we actually would like to work on, but we're really not really focused on parents paying. So we're taking about 30,000 a year, but our costs are fairly high on the resources that we use, and when kids want to do a project, we make sure the stuff's equal, and we try, if they want to do something crazy, then we're all not one of them, so that's where our resources get spent.
Crazy is good, keep that.
So, it's amazing what you've done in 6 years. I'm really impressed, and thank you for inspiring these amazing young people. And again, thank you for coming into the chamber today to present to us, and hopefully an answer more.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys.
Thank you. Councillors, you'll also note in the public forum part of the agenda there was a note on the actions taken on the comments that was raised at the last council meeting. So that brings us to item 5.1, our police report, and a very warm welcome to Marty. You were accompanied by a security personnel.
Very good. That's the legendary Detective Gower.
Thank you.
We've got to go see someone after this. Right, everyone, and worship councillors, good to be back. I'll just give you a quick update on where we are, some of the significant newsworthy items, things that happened around the way too. The last month or so, so probably the first thing I want to highlight is the great work the organised crime teams have done in the last month. So Operation Freya was an investigation of the supply and manufacture of methamphetamine by the headhunters. 13 journalists and associates were arrested. A range of charges including importing, supplying and manufacturing meth. 20 kilos of methamphetamine has been seized, 10 motor vehicles, $100,000 in cash, and one property restraint. That's a significant result for a good operation that targets crime that is probably our biggest, certainly one of our biggest contributors to violence and harm in our communities. So probably the other newsworthy item is we've had a few armed robberies around the town in the last month. So we've caught a 13-year-old who's done played a significant part in all of those crimes, those serious crimes. Another 16-year-old is going to be charged the next day. There's one finger out skin. Other than that, we've had some gang confrontations in the last week or so, which you're probably all well aware of. Unfortunately, it's two gangs going at each other over what is a really minor incident that has sparked a rather adverse reaction between the two of them. One house in Rama has been had a few rounds put through the side of the car as well. So I can advise you and reassure you that we're doing everything we can to bring that to a very sharp close. 5 search warrants completed already, 4 arrests, and we will continue until those people stop doing what they're doing. So it's significant, it's very significant for our communities. These two are exchanging shots with each other, something that we want to stop urgently. That's probably a roundup. I'm not even going to start on COVID, so yeah, I guess that's probably an executive summary, if you like, of what's been keeping us busy. Of course, you probably know we've got some help from around the country. Tony Hill's done very well to give us some assistance over through the end of January, to help us with a number of demands, primarily in the COVID space. Other than that, that's probably a lot.
Thank you, Marty. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Councillor Cocorello and Councillor Benny.
Marty, thanks again for coming in. I know it's always pressure on your time.
That's okay.
Big thing, a lot of our Indian communities feeling quite isolated. How are the police dealing with those situations?
So, multi-ethnic collective, we had a meeting last week. There is some concern in the Indian community, and rightly so, that dairies are getting targeted. There was one crime that was a specific, that you would classify as a hate crime. A young girl was attacked on the cycle track, apprehended a young person, I won't tell you the age, but it was a specific race-related incident, which has been solved. The rest is a heightened sense of anxiety in what is an environment of high anxiety in year 2 of COVID. There have been a number of here is targeted by some of our young offenders, and I've mentioned some of the ages here of people that we're apprehending. Very happy that it's not race targeted. They're just after cigarettes and cash. So we had our mock ethnic collective meeting last week, and it went very well. So I don't see there's no huge concern there from them. Just going to keep what we're doing in that space going.
With the multi-ethnic community that we've got out there in high anxiety, you're able to give them reassurance though that you are responding to their issues, you are able to find answers to the crimes fairly quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about solving individual crimes, it's about having that relationship with them, and obviously there's some history there where their home countries, the police aren't necessarily the people that you go to sort problems out. It might be the third person on the list that you go to sort crime problems out. Here it's number one for a lot of people, and that's one of the big hurdles that we have to overcome. And I think we're making some really good progress. We've had our parkour teams running around all our rural communities, our ethnic communities, providing some reassurance. I know there's some prevention, a lot of work going on in terms of harming up their particular targets, things like gas, officer finance from just harming up their security. And that is the things going really, really well.
Councillor Bean.
Christmas money and your security guard there. That's nice to see. So a subject that comes up here regularly recently is graffiti around town, and you will have noticed the increase in graffiti. So I probably know what the answer is going to be, but are you doing anything about it? Will you do anything about it? So as a council, we've got our DTAG system is pretty much gone now, and I'm hoping that we can look at reintroducing something like that. But in the meantime, it's the town's looking like a get-up.
Yeah, there's strong words. There is some tagging. It's signal crime. You've got to be blind not to see it. It affects a lot of people, a lot of communities and bits and pieces. But that DTAG, what the council had going with Te Ora was really, really cool. So I'm looking to replicate that at the moment. No one's doing anything about it at this immediate time. It will be something that we look at in the early new year. It's just space we're in at the moment. There's a lot more high priorities for us in terms of victims and people crime versus tagging. That's unfortunate, but it's just can't do that. So in the new year, we'll be looking to partner with a number of organisations to get that DTAG going again, which was really, really effective.
And so just because in the old days, so the police had a database of the signatures pretty much for the graffiti. You're nothing like that at all anymore. And I know your time is just taken with this other stuff. So
I think there is a database around. I'm not sure how active it is. I know City Safe are doing some work on it. I'm not sure whether we've got a database that's actually active. It kind of died off. Most of the tags are easily identifiable. Individually, our youth teams are actually able to, it's not hard to find it and identify some of the individuals who are actually signing their signature. It's just the time and resources. Of course, our youth teams are deployed helping us with some young kids who are running around with firearms, running them in areas, pointing weapons at people. So it's a bit of a priority. And of course, our school teams are doing what they do. Kind of fallen off the radar, if I'm honest.
Right. So, and just a quick comment, if I could, on the proceeds of crime fund and the use of that. And I understand that one of our staff was presenting or looking at the office fund for security. Is it being used in any other way up here?
I probably think it's the actual applications are jealously guarded. So there's one pool running. there's a lot going on in the district. There's probably 3 or 4 in our team that actually know what applications are going through. So of course you partner with anyone in your community, and it's very much right from Kaitai through to Whangarei. There are applications in. You probably know of ours. That's for a lot of money of city staff themselves and council and partnering to create some CCTV stuff. We're asking for a lot of money around the Parliament. And we have our Zoom interview yesterday. So the applications.
And I was thinking about that for that detail, until we can look at funding it properly here.
Yeah, so that's probably need to look at that and just see where it kind of fits that. So it's quite specific in terms of the outcomes. So I'm not sure we can any further into the process of the client. But it's got to be sustainable whatever we do. Yeah. You've seen the district tells us it went well for a while, then dropped off, and it's come back. So you've got to build something that's going to stand up and last.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Thanks, Marty. Yeah. As the parent of a 16-year-old, it's so hard for me to hear, when you having to deal with these kids, and that's what they are, they're just kids.
Yep.
And it's just really sad that they haven't got, a direction or any drive or ambition to do better for themselves. It's really heartbreaking. So I feel for you on that. My question is just coming from my local community, so the Tutukaka Coast. Just had questions around what is planned as far as coastal drives or monitoring. Has the police got any extra, what do you call that? Resources planned for the coast?
So, right back to Gavin's day, when the town was very, very safe under his leadership and control. We used to put extra resources out to the beaches. So I've got a plan based on 5 years worth of data. I've talked about Untitled it's going to visit all our rural communities with our civic staff here. Once the extra checkpoints come down, they'll be spread across the motu, helping us in that space with our UK teams. So the community focused, EU focused, specifically targeting those rural, isolated communities to make sure that everyone's safe, they can see us. We've got a summer policing plan which is well prepared by our prevention manager. We've already assigned extra staff to cover right through from the eastern beaches at Untitled, right through to the top of our eastern beach border with Inspector Hughes area, which is the far north. It's almost up to Rafferty and Cochrane. So we've got extra staff on their coverage. There'll be plenty of visibility. Seeing extra staff in the district, I would think that
That's great. And just further to that, so that's really good news. Do the police have kind of a comms plan? Like, do you just to put it out to the community what you are doing, and
I think we probably there's a national Facebook program which will probably put some comms on just before Christmas and get it out there. So at the moment,
because there are always a lot of questions from especially all the rural coastal communities, so it might be quite cool to have a story in the Advocate or in the Leader just about what is planned with the summer policing.
Yeah, we've also pulled up one of the maritime rips, that lines and more and to give a bit of coverage. We're also partnering with it's not quite we're trying to do some maritime coverage through Virginia as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Marty. I've been fielding a number of phone calls from businesses, and it's to do with the checkpoint at Purity. They deal with a lot of farms and businesses around all of the north and in some cases further south. have got people that have only got one vaccination shot, no passport, and they're going to, say, Kaiwaka, to work on a dairy farm and fix a refrigeration unit. How do they get on? We know we can get there, and they can get there. How do they get on coming back through?
You getting south?
If they can, yeah, but still in the north, like they're not south across road.
Okay, so the checkpoints are only going to be here until Sunday. They're going to be mobile. Right? So that's the first thing. That's the plan at this stage. It may change. It may be extended. That's an operational decision. Vehicles heading south are not obstructed. Get out of the district. But to get back in, the rules are very, very clear. You have to have your certificate or proof of a test within 72 hours. If you haven't got that, we'll be saying to you, sorry, you need to provide that.
So that's even if they don't go out of our district, out of Concord.
No, so that's coming through the checkpoint. And so the boundaries, there's probably some of the confusion there. There's different boundaries, so Tahara and some of the old ones, there was a lot of conversation and discussion about where they should be. Health have different boundaries in place. The councils have a different boundary in here. And it's put them in Whangarei District for a reason. We don't intend to obstruct local people. So, go such thing as they give us blueberry muffins. That's not our intention to stop locals moving about. The intention is to welcome those coming out of Tian to Northland and making sure that they are compliant with the health order. So you should be able to move about. It's free. You notice all the side roads aren't blocked. We have road patrols on those. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cutforth.
Yeah, Marty, just to clarify, since we're probably all confused, taking that example where somebody's not going out of Northland, but they are going south of the checkpoint and then coming back home, are you saying that it doesn't matter whether they're double vexed or not, that any local can just go straight through?
No, I'm saying that the checkpoint is there to ensure compliance with the health order in respect of people travelling up from TM. That's what it's for. It's not to police locals in the traffic light system.
So if you stop somebody who's a local at the checkpoint who's not compliant, if you like, what will happen then?
We're not there to stop them going through, moving about the way too. It's not designed for that purpose. They're quite entitled to do that. They're not breaching the health order. They haven't come from Tian from. So it's quite complex, but it's really easy when it can be very confusing once you get down to the details. But it's quite simple and Tian.
If you went to Kaiwaka for a beer, you'd still be allowed home.
Councillor Coppola?
Yeah, follow-up question for that, Madam Chair. Marty, the police were issuing, or someone was issuing stickers down in the Waipu area. Now, I understand they've run out, but yet there's still a lot of businesses who are still doing that local thing, travelling between Whangarei and Waipu quite a bit, and how are you going to differentiate between someone who's local effectively and someone who's not?
So it's really, really quick and really simple. So we've all got these on our phones which are scanning.
Yep.
It's just that simple. You just simply scan them.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they won't have the pass because they're not vaxxed.
So if they're local,
yep,
they'll go straight through.
No, but they come backwards and forwards through. They've got him with a local sticker. There's no evidence that they're local. How will you tell?
So it's actually where you live. It's actually based on where you're residing.
Yep.
That's okay.
So what you're saying is they've got to carry evidence of where they live.
Driver's license.
Driver's license, yeah.
Yep.
Not all driver's licenses have address on them, that's why I'm asking.
So it might be also when your car's registered, it might be, have some proof of your residence, but I think you'll find that the flows are going really well, and we've got some contingency plans if they can.
Thanks, Marty. I just, like Councillor Reid, I've had business people getting quite upset.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get clarification from them, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you very much for your report. It's just a relatively simple question, but it's on the same line with these stickers that go on, I would presume, a car. If a car leaves the area, people get out of the car, other people get in the car, and the car comes back. How does that get stopped? How does that limit?
I guess there's 1,000 scenarios where you could talk about potential breaches, but the intent of this, you all know the origins of why we're doing this. It's not to restrict the movement of locals. It's about a level of compliance for those travelling from TM. So we're not in a business, or we don't have the intent to restrict local people from travelling locally. We need their cooperation to do what's right.
That's not what I asked. So if somebody from up here goes to Auckland, gets out of their car, gives it to somebody from Auckland to come back up in the car with the sticker. Yeah. That's the question I'm asking. I understand.
So I would think at the checkpoint they'd look at the number of people in the car. So it's not an automatic pass. If the car's full of people, they might decide to stop and say, well, why were you off to? Things made available, but that's a case-by-case basis. And there's, it's not a perfect system. There's ways of getting around it. We saw that when we were at Order Level 4, there were people applying for MB passes for a range of fraudulent reasons. And they got them, and we let them through. But we'll pick them up later on. So, part of this is cooperation from the public. If you wanted to fraud the system, you probably can.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Marty. I want to ask you about vehicles on beaches, and hopefully, we can spare time so on patrol those. Today, I feel you had a bit of a hammering over the checkpoint. I heard at Waiku. There was frustration there for sure around the handling of the stickers.
Yep.
But I can tell you there's someone who's travelled through the checkpoint and back. It seems to be working very well. No one's being held up as far as I can tell. As long as you've got proof of where you live, it seems to be working very well. So thank you for that.
Cheers.
Councillor Golightly.
Your worship, sorry Marty, I was just going to ask one very quick question. I noticed you said before that the checkpoints are only there till Sunday.
Yep.
Has that been made public?
So
it has now.
that's the original plan.
It was, okay.
But it may change. Right. So it's not. That's a decision that our district committee will make in conjunction with a lot of groups involved in it. So it may change.
So it's a decision of the police as opposed to the government. Kind of.
No, that's an operational decision, and it's made in conjunction with our partners, but it may change. It just depends on a lot of things really. But we'll make them in conjunction with our partners, so we may go mobile right through the whole of Auckland, concentrating down at the bottom end. Obviously, we get calls from TM, but it's an open.
It's an open book.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, just a quick comment. Not coded. The people in that ring are still telling me how grateful they are that you kept the police there. So I just wanted to
we've got some big
reinforce that and
thank you
for that.
Big shoes to fill. Big shoes to fill. Almost impossible shoes, but that's just attrition for us.
Don't stroke his ego.
Avoid the flattery, yeah. Marty, I would like to just comment on the fact that you are implementing government's public health orders. We also implement government policies, and we come up against the people who are grumpy about that. So we share that sense of frustration from the community where we are doing something that we're required to do. So I think we could all say that we understand a little bit of how it feels when it's like don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
So thank you for the work that your teams are doing, implementing those health orders and keeping our people safe. That's really important. I'm also conscious of the stark contrast between our public forum, where we had incredibly bright young people who are going down a path of exciting futures, and you're dealing with some young people who have chosen a different path. If we can somehow, kind of get that those outcomes woven in, that would be amazing for young people to have some hope in their future, as the people who have been in the room this morning have exhibited. And finally, I just wish to say Merry Christmas to you and your teams, and because it is important work that you do. When I hear what you're dealing with around organised crime, family harm, and we talk about graffiti, again, there's a contrast, but we all want the same thing. We want to be proud of our communities and safe. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Councillors, we do need to have a motion that Council notes the report. Councillor Holtz is moving, Councillor Martin is seconding. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Brings us to item 6.1 of our council agenda, which are the minutes of our meeting held on Thursday the 25th of November. Can I have somebody move that they are true and accurate? And there was a confidential section of the meeting on the 25th, if we could include the minutes of the confidential section as well. So Councillor Golightly is moving that they are true and accurate. Councillor Peters is seconding. Those in favour? Oh, any amendments or corrections required? No. Got any spelling mistakes? Spelling name is correct. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Item 6.2, the minutes of our extraordinary council meeting on Friday the 26th of November. Do I move it? There are true record. Councillor Cutforth is moving. The seconding. Any corrections or amendments required? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Item 7.1, the notice of motion, Councillor Tricia Cutforth, and I will hand over to Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Worship. I'll read it out because there's actually three slightly different versions, because I'm a pedant. I am a pedant. So I'll read out the correct version, which is that Council requests staff investigate the costs and benefits of adopting a living wage for directly employed contracted workers who deliver services on a regular basis, and report back by July 2022. July? I'm sorry, that was me being non-pedantic. April. 4th you all, eh?
So there's one word change about that should be good.
Okay. What about basis? Is it spelled correctly?
No, it's not, but correct.
Basis. Thank you. We'll correct.
It's always important to sweat the small stuff, I feel.
Do we have a seconder for the notice? Councillor Golightly is seconding. Councillor Cutforth. Thank you, Worship.
First of all, I'll just get in before some of the comments that I'm bound to hear. Just councillors, this is looking at the cost and benefit, okay? It's not going right now, moving everybody to a living wage. It's looking at, obviously there will be costs, but what are also the advantages and positive outcomes if that was to happen. But it's for staff to look at that and to report back in time for us to take into account any changes, hopefully, for the annual plan. In so doing, we're joining like a lot of different organisations, but also a really growing trend amongst councils to address this issue with not only their staff, which is what we have, and poor Rob has to keep checking what the living wage is because it keeps going up, and then we have to adjust what we're paying our staff. But not just our own staff, but also it's our directly contracted staff. So it's people like people who clean these premises. It's people who clean the public toilets for us. It's the people who we realised during the lockdown are actually the essential workers. And at the moment, the minimum wage is $20.75. Now, I need to get out my calculator and multiply that by 40, but it certainly comes to something like $800 and something a week gross, which people are trying to live on at a time when rents in Whangarei, and again, I haven't checked the actual detail, but I know just from anecdotal stuff, rents are like, for a 3-bedroom house, the cheapest you can get is like $450, $500 now. Cost of living increases something like 5.6% at the moment, but wages are not keeping up with that. So people are going backwards, and people at the bottom end are going backwards proportionately faster than everybody else. So if you're earning 800 gross or thereabouts a week and you're paying 500 net in rent, you can sort of just imagine what's happening for the people who we really, and our community really relies on. So we're not talking about, before I answer that, I'll answer Councillor Holst, who's about to say, we're not talking about people who are trainees, we're not talking about people on youth rates, we're talking about our ordinary staff, okay? Ordinary contracted, main contracted staff. And I noted the other day that fruit pickers are being paid $27 an hour now. So I really think it's incumbent on us to look at what we're paying through our direct contracts, and I'm really hoping that councillors will support this recommendation for us to have a really good look at it and come back with a good decision. Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
I confirm that fruit pickers are paid $27 an hour and more if they have extra duties. The sort of, I know this is just an investigation, but the sort of community that we live in will be better for all if salaries are closer together for the richest and the poorest. So that is an advantage for all. So it is not just philanthropic towards workers who deserve a living wage, it's also better for those. And I can say this in that I've lived in societies where there are extremes of poverty and riches, and the result is not what we want in Whangarei for anybody. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to speak in support, and I really just want to say this because, and it's probably emotive, but when we heard Marty's presentation, and we're thinking about those kids who are on the streets, and we think about, did he say an 11-year-old? 13-year-old who has been doing all those burglaries? And I mean, I know that everyone has a choice in what they do, but I'll tell you what, as a parent of teenagers, and a lot of us are parents, to be able to afford to give your kids those cool opportunities, like going to tech school and playing sports, just to be able to get your kids some football boots, or to be able to pay for a school camp, or all those things that, because it's hard being a teenager. What did those teenagers say yesterday? They are all like, the stress, the pressure. Teenagers need stuff to look forward to. They need stuff, just little things to be happy. And if your parent is on a minimum wage and can't even afford to buy you some fresh fruit and vegetables, you don't even have a school lunch, so you don't go to school. Well, it's all part of the big picture. So I'm not saying that doing this investigation is going to save the world, and I'm not going to say that maybe it's going to make a difference for all, children of parents who are on minimum wage. But I think that this is the type of thing that we need to investigate, because I think, like Councillor Peters said, that actually, in the bigger scheme of things, the community will benefit. So yeah. So thank you, Councillor Cutforth, for bringing this to the table.
Any further discussion? Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's really, really strange when you sit in this council chamber from last week to this week, or last month meeting, we had various councillors say we don't want to put any more burden on the ratepayers. Here we are straight away. We've got, the next meeting, we've got, let's take some money off the ratepayers to actually fund a wage increase. It was totally the government's responsibility to set that welfare system up. So every time we increase the wage, like this is minimum wage, it's the people at the bottom of the rung that get hit the hardest. And I've got first-hand experience in that because I chair the campground in Ruakaka, where we employ a lot of casuals over that time, and they're generally the high school students or people first job students, or people who just left school and want a summer job. That equates around about an extra $40 to $50 a week to those young people. And it's easier for us now to go straight out and contract to a contractor to do the cleaning and rubbish collection, and therefore those opportunities for those low-income earners is gone completely. And that's reality, that's what happens. But we as councillors, we've got to trust that the employers are doing the correct thing, the people who directly employ people are trying their best to pay as much as they can. But just remember, we're just going through a pandemic, there's a huge amount of businesses that are actually going out of business. So, you know, we can't have everything. And as a council, I'm not supporting us putting a pressure on other employers to do the work, this work. You know, there's government, every employee has got other avenues to pick up a short-term of welfare payments, presently. You go, any one of them can go there, they can get rent relief, they can get all this sort of stuff. But if we cannot go out and keep increasing costs for our ratepayers, then it's not our responsibility to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Benny.
I'm really torn on this topic because I see the intention of it, but and Councillor Hull stole my thunder big time. And that the argument last week was the poor ratepayer we will not impose more costs on them. This will undoubtedly increase the cost to the ratepayer. So you can't have it both ways. As far as that's the issue for me that I'm looking at. Great intention, but anybody who's been in business knows that those costs will be put back somewhere, they will be recouped somewhere, and it will be the ratepayer that pays for it. So while it's a lovely thought, I don't see it's our responsibility. It's like funding, community funding. There's never enough money for us to do that. We could increase the rates and increase our community funding, or we can say you need to go look elsewhere for funding. We can't save the world here, and the councillors put a line in the sand last week and said, I will not increase funding for ratepayers, and then we get this. So, yeah, it's an interesting argument.
Councillor Benny. Councillor Deming.
Thank you. I can't resist speaking on this because I think there's a fundamental difference between increasing rates to provide something that is a nice to have as compared with increasing rates so that somebody can live. However, I also have the problem of how far do we go in demanding what the contractors that we give tenders to, how far do we go in deciding on their own business attitudes and what their expenses ought to be, because I think Phil was absolutely right when he said that most businesses are cutting everything to the quick, just trying to survive. And the problem with businesses not surviving is that these people we're trying to get minimum wage for will then have no wage at all, and will have to fall back on the government benefit, which as I understand it is well below the minimum wage. But what I really would like is, I have a question, just what is the cost in resources, staff time, and, well, the ability of our staff who are already under the hammer for getting jobs done? How are we in, what's the position there?
Thank you. I'll just refer that to Rob.
I don't expect this will be a massive job, so obviously it depends on how deep we go into it. But I think we will be able to manage it within the time frame of April. Hopefully we should be able to do that. But
and the cost would be?
look, we haven't scoped it, so I don't know our cost, but what I will say is what we would do in this circumstance is do what we can by April. Now that could mean that if we don't go into the depth that council wants, then you'll have a bunch of questions to ask us at that point, but we'll do what we can.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much. I too find it it's a tricky one. We have made a stand on not increasing the rates, and Councillor Dean has said it's nice to have. This is a nice to have for the people who would benefit from it. I think ultimately I support the investigation because we're arguing about something that we don't really understand the quantity at the moment. And if once we have the investigation, we will know if it's a case of, if you like, robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking it from one end, putting it in another. So I think we should do the investigation. I would support the recommendation, but yeah, absolutely acknowledge it's a difficult one.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of fish hooks in it. I know businesses that have had meetings with their staff and they've gone on to 30 hours because they couldn't afford the wage bill. And they're not hiring more people, and if the higher the wages, the more pressure that's put on these small businesses, the more difficult it will be for them to continue to operate. And a lot of people have training people and all kinds of different things. But the reality is, somebody has to earn the dollar to make the money to run the operation. If they can't run the operation, then they can't operate. So they just go on to less and less hours. I know quite a few people who've said to me that they cut the hours because they've only got X amount that they can spend on the wages. So it actually is a self-defeating idea, really. We just need to try and encourage everybody to pay as much as they can, do as much as they can, and recruit the staff that they can get to do it. So, yeah, I'm torn on it as well, but it's a difficult one.
Councillor Martin. Councillor.
Wholehearted support for this. When you're looking and hearing about the issues of people that are out there, especially that are on having to be reliant on a minimum wage or whatnot, whereas a living wage is actually something where it just actually covers the basics for people to actually get out there and live. Considering we're hearing about people not being able to afford rugby boots or whatnot, and whether that is a choice or not. But it's those type of things that right now we're so time poor that we aren't able to be a community anymore. We're not able to be there for the families. We're now having 2 adults working as opposed to just 1 adult working and then somebody else still being at home and looking after the kids. We can't deal with everything as we are. It is difficult. Considering we already are, this is basically for our contractors, I believe, that we contract out, not necessarily requiring other businesses everywhere to be able to do this. This is for what we expect. And as we did say, as I think it was Councillor Cufforth mentioned about before, with the people that are the essential workers that are out there, that are doing the utmost and are in sometimes in the most risk as well, we need to be able to support them as best as we possibly can. This is an investigation to find out what this details will be brought. Hopefully it will be able to provide some good detail about how much it will be, and even this percentage will probably won't equate to a hell of a lot in the grand scheme of all the council money that we actually have, because it's a small portion on here, which will then, the ratio is completely different. So I'm looking forward to hearing back and seeing what this may actually cost us, but at the same time, what are we costing those who we're employing by not giving them a living wage? Thank you.
Any further councillors? Councillors, I'll be supporting the motion, mainly because at this stage, I don't know how many of our contract staff are paid the living wage or below or above. I don't know that. I want to know. I want to know what the impact would be if we were to ensure that contracts that are let by this council for council services, we're not talking about the whole wider community, we're talking about services to this council for our ratepayers. I want to know that. I want to know what the costs would be, what the benefits would be, and that is what the investigation is for. So I do support it today so that I can know without speculation.
a question.
Councillor Martin.
If we employ contractor staff at this new rate, how is the contractor going to have them working on their private businesses and private work? Are they going to cut their wage, or are they going to have to pay for all of their work? That's the problem.
Councillor Martin, that wasn't a question.
It is a question.
Well,
are we going to expect the council contractors, when they do part-time work for us, to pay the wage, and when they go on to other jobs and other contracts, are they going to pay them the same?
I'm sure that will be part of the investigation. That's what the investigation is about. Any further discussion? Councillor Cutler, you wanted to question.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of points I meant to say earlier. One, just for people's information, the median income in New Zealand is $1,120 a week. I think one of the issues too is that wages are always the thing that employers can control, if you like. Other costs are effectively fixed, they're out of employers' hands. Power, whatever, and same for councils actually. We just accept if our power costs go up, that's what we have to pay. So that's why the debate often is around wages, because they're seen as a sort of variable that we do have some control over. But I'll just remind councillors that firstly, as Councillor Cooper said, and also in Worship, that this is an investigation. It's looking at what will it cost, and conversely, what are the advantages if we do that. There's a lot of information now from other councils, I think, that our staff will be able to use. And we also have contractors already, in fact, one contractor last year who actually came to us saying that they were prepared to pay the living wage and had done some costings. And more of our contractors, I know even with the Civic Centre Board, are paying their staff a living wage. So I think on balance, looking at giving our staff some time, not going too deeply into it, but using information that is around, I think, and coming back to us so that we can make a decision on it in April I'd really support people voting in favour of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cutler. The right of replies in hand. I'll put that motion. Those
Division, please.
It's called for a division. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Golightly, Cutforth, Deeming, Benny, Cooper, Murphy, Peters, Connor, and Her Worship the Mayor.
Against?
Councillors Cockerillo, Martin, Hulse, and Reid.
Carried. Thank you. Item 7.2, the notice of motion from Councillor Ken Cooper. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Worship. I move this notice of motion and the
Councillor, would you mind reading out your notice of motion so that you need to read out what you're moving, and then I'll call for a second.
Okay. Motion is a request staff to provide a written update on the projected total cost of the Civic Centre. And number 2, adopt the projected total cost of the Civic Centre as the official budget for the Civic Centre.
Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
Councillor Hulse is seconding. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I've brought this motion to the council chamber for a public meeting because this is our signature project for our council, and it is very visible, and yet some of the information is difficult to find. And before we, it's important to look at the whole picture, isn't it? And there are some good things about this project that we do know, and that it has been nominated for an award, and I believe came second in the National Beacon Awards. And I know that the project control members of the elected members on the project control group have kept us aware of that, and we thank Councillor Deeming and Councillor Cutforth for that. However, on the 17th of June, we had a confidential briefing, and because it's confidential, I can't tell you what it is, but it raised concerns for me. And ever since then, I've been trying to find out additional information as to what this project is going to cost us, where we stand, and can the public know. It's now December, and I think we're yet to know a full price for the purchase of the land, the construction of the building, the cost of the landscaping and the cost of the fit out. And so therefore, what is the total budget for the Civic Centre? Now perhaps that information can come, and we definitely, I'm not saying I believe in the Civic Centre. I voted for it when I was a new member on council, and I still believe that the reason behind it is sound. It's more a matter of being transparent and allowing people out there to know exactly what's going on, so that they know that we are spending their money prudently and we have oversight as elected members, and that is our job. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cocker.
Your Worship, before I make any statement, I just want to double check here. Have we not been told that the budget for it was 48 million?
That is the budget that's been approved, yes, for the construction.
Then I would like to move a procedural motion, if that's okay. And the procedural motion is that the item lay on the table till April 2022 when we go through our annual plan.
This procedural motion has been moved. Do I have a second of that?
Yeah.
So deeming. Councillors, as a procedural motion, I will put that motion, and I'll just ask for that to be read again, that the item lie on the table until April 2022. Councillor Cooper has asked for a division on the procedural motion. I will put that motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Cutforth, Deeming, Cockerillo, Martin, Reid, and Her Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillors Golightly, Benny, Cooper, Holtz, Murphy, Peters, and Connor.
The motion is lost. So, open to further debate. Councillor Murphy.
Where do I start? We're going through a process, so I don't have any problem with being transparent about where we are at in the process. And I think it's been a good process. It's a huge project. It's a massive undertaking. I support the project in its entirety. We have got exceptionally professional people working on the project. We know that, due to COVID, all kinds of issues that, and actually, luckily, that hasn't impacted on the timeline of the construction too badly, which has been a really, really positive thing. We have a budget in place. We're working to that budget, and I'm interested to hear the discussion. I don't have anything against Councillor Cooper's notice of motion, but I'll be interested to hear what others have to say, and then we'll vote on it at the end. But I think it's really important to have the debate about this now, and that's why I voted against the procedural motion, because I think it's really important to actually hear what other councillors are thinking and what they have to say. So let's talk.
Councillors, I have no problem whatsoever with the first part of Councillor Cooper's notice of motion. The second part is the one that I have a difficulty with, because at this stage we don't know what the projected total costs are, and until we do, then I do not want to adopt a budget that is not finalised. So I'm very happy to support it. I do agree it is our key project, and we want to know, and we've been updated. We will continue to be updated, and I think in future we'll request that there are monthly updates and open and transparent, where there's been nothing hidden at all. But I can't support the second part, because at this stage, while the project is still in train, and I'm sure Councillor Cooper appreciates the being part of the Honda project, I don't think they could have projected a total end project cost for that either until the project was actually complete. There may well be some additional costs. As you've pointed out, Councillor Murphy, there may be some supply chain issues, some various other things, but at this stage I think it's not wise to adopt a final projected total cost as the budget, official budget, because we have an official budget. And when we know that, we will be able to deal with it. So I'm very happy to support the first one, but I won't be supporting the second part, and on that basis, I will put it in parts. Councillor Peters?
Thank you. And I've been approached by a lot of people asking about this, and I want to endorse our two councillors, Deeming and Cutford, who've been wifing this project along, and I think that we've done a good job, and it's going to be something that we're proud of. But you know, the speculations, and you can't say anything. You know, they go, I heard it's blown out by this much. Well, actually, it's not. But I can't say anything about it. You know, so you know, even if there is going to be a slightly higher cost than we've put out, we just need to tell people. You know, and people actually, they still will moan or growl, but they'll feel better because they're in charge of some of the information. So especially the first part, I do take the Mayor's point about number 2, but yeah, I do take that point because in fact we don't know, there may be some changes. Thank you.
Councillor Peters. Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Worship. I totally agree with what Councillor Peters was saying, and also yourself, Your Worship. And I really support the first item. I think that's where we're up to with the project now. We have had verbals, but now our finance manager has attempted a couple of times to give councillors an update informally, but I think we're now where the project is at, because it's about to be closed in. You know, like we're really starting, and I think the community will start really seeing, well, partly they'll be seeing progress, but then they won't, I suppose, because the wheels will be up. But you know, like they're going to see that it's really moving ahead, and we're, while not quite on track for being there for our final meeting, you know, it's going to move really quickly over the next year, and it is very timely, I think, to be bringing monthly written updates to the council in some form of the committee. But again, I mean, why I supported it lying on the table was really because I'm very concerned about point number 2. And as somebody who's on the working group, I can absolutely say that the project group is watching practically, I mean, I'm not going to say every cent literally, but pretty much every $10 is being absolutely scrutinised. And we're moving into a stage now where there's going to be a lot more tenders, because we're getting into the really complex detail of the, you know, it's not just putting up the walls and putting on the floors, it's all the other detail. And people know, including our community, know the blowout that is happening at the moment with suppliers. And, you know, there's something here about, you know, prices going up 27% and, you know, wait times of 6 months and not being able to get this, not being able to get that. So actually putting a fixed cost now on that project, I think, just doesn't do us any service at all. But just please be confident, and the community can be confident, that the working group is watching every cost and doing whatever it can to, if something runs over here, then something can be pulled back at this point. So that's why I won't be supporting the first motion, but I cannot support the second one.
Any further debate? Councillor Reid. I was first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm supporting this notice of motion. Just a couple of questions on number 2. The projected total costs of the Civic Centre. Councillor Whangarei mentioned there was 43 million.
Yeah.
So is that the official budget? Yes. Currently it is. Currently. So if we were to adopt number 2, okay, so is it a set in stone figure there, or like, what does it actually mean if we adopt that number 2?
I guess the problem that I have with 2 is the projected total cost. We don't actually know what they are, so you can't adopt a projected total when you don't know what that is. That's why I struggle with number 2.
So that would mean that if we were going to adopt the projected total costs, it would mean that that total cost is 43 million. Is that my understanding?
No, we currently have a budget construction budget of $48 million that's been approved by council. We are conscious that the end total construction budget may be more than that, but at this stage we can't adopt a question mark. I don't think it's wise to adopt a question mark because we don't yet know what the projected total cost will be, but we will have more clarity on that as contracts are let. That's my understanding. Ellen, did you want to add anything to that at this stage? No? Yes, no? You've done.
Well, it was just to note, as well as issues of pinning down what the projected cost was going to be, I think it would be adopting the budget now and before the end of the plan process, which the project will take effect, will be premature. So timing any adjustment for that will make more sense about the process, as well as having a better number to be able to use.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's an interesting morning. We're investigating the possibility of having to pay more for projects in one breath, and then on the next we're trying to fix a budget on another. Living in a real business world these days is kind of different to the old one. Budgets are now moving targets, as I'm finding in my own business. You can't nail down prices. They are going to shift. There was a time when you could arrange a discount or push for a discount. Those are becoming harder and harder to find now. It is a fact of life. Admittedly, COVID hasn't helped, but inflation is probably the thing that's driving everything at the moment, and the living wage, minimum wage, all these increases that are thrust on us by the central government are factors that have to be put in. I'm happy enough with the recommendation number 1, but I'm afraid I cannot support the second part.
That's a Benny.
Right. So, and again, it's come up a couple of times, and I'll put it there, they're a roofing project. Every step along the way, the projected cost for that, our intrepid reporter had that front page of the paper 5 months after it came out. And rightly so. And that was an important, divisive project for this council. And this is as well. There is so much speculation out there about the projected costs blowing out. This is ratepayer money. We must be open and honest and transparent with it. And nothing has happened as far as I'm concerned, and so I support it. I don't see the issue with part 2, to be honest.
Councillor Deeming.
Thank you. I totally support the comments that Councillor Cutforth made earlier, and just referring back to Councillor Peters, you're absolutely right. There's so much speculation out there, but it's not going to matter, in my view, how much information we put out there. There's still going to be speculation, and the doomsayers are always going to say that it's going to be 10 million, 20 million, 30 million more than whatever budget we put out there. So what we need to concentrate on is being accurate, being reasonable, being fair, getting the costs to the minimum we can, but as Councillor Murphy said, while doing the project well. So I think we're exceptionally fortunate in the quantity surveyor and the project management that we have. I guess Councillor Cutforth and I are privileged in that we're there listening to them every month in their efforts to keep the costs as low as they possibly can while producing the outcome that we're asking for, the sustainability features, the green wall, all of the different issues that this council has been pretty clear that it wanted and that the hapu wanted, and they're achieving that. But as was demonstrated to us the other day, they're trying to do that by swapping out materials that are difficult to get or have become very expensive to obtain with cheaper varieties that are still going to do as good a job. And the concentration has been on making sure that the maintenance of the building in years to come is going to be as minimal as possible, so that we're not using surfaces that need repainting every 10 years. It may be a little more expensive to install at the beginning, but it's going to save a lot of cost as time progresses. I'll support number 1 because that's obvious, reasonable, rational, but I couldn't possibly support item 2 because any business is a moving feast. We're trying to keep it down as low as possible. It's certainly nowhere near the figures that are being speculated out in public. But by the same token, it's quite difficult when you're dealing with our contractors, local people who are commercially sensitive. They don't want us putting out there whatever they may have tendered, whatever price they're asking. But we're trying to deal with as many local firms as possible. And at the moment, I think it's something like 80%. We're employing lots of apprentices, training people on the job, whether that may cost a little more or not. I think it's a good thing for council to be doing. But, you know, I can understand the ratepayer being anxious. We've made some interesting decisions recently, and they're anxious that we're not wasting money on items that are not necessary. But in the end, we actually have to house our staff in one building. We decided that we would do that. We decided that we would make it larger. That increased the cost by 10 million. And that decision was made a long time back by this council. So when you hear speculation that it suddenly increased by 10 million, that was the 10 million. And we decided that, to increase it so that we could be sure that all of our people could go in the one building and that there would be extra space for anything else that was required to move in. Waka Kotahi and various other entities that are looking at moving in. And making space for the hapu and their meeting rooms and all those sorts of cultural aspects as well. So it doesn't matter what we do, there's going to be speculation, there's going to be strife, there's going to be people trying to put it down simply because it is a council project. But I think it's a fantastic council project. We need to look after our staff. We need to have the staff in a building where they're secure, where they're not having to have security guards standing behind them, where they're not getting locked out every other day. So that's what we're, as a council, trying to achieve.
Councillor Denning. Councillor Connor.
I'll just scribble out all these notes because Councillor Deming just said everything I was about to say.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Well done. And coming from you, being on the working party and group, it's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I fully support the fact that we need to be able to get this done, get this out there as well, so that people can actually get updates to know where we are sitting for transparency. But at the same time, we need to listen and make sure we're aware of the business confidentiality that we are, well, that the staff and everyone are privy to, because that's how that's how business and everything works. Even though I can't go on to the detail, I'm relieved as well that we are looking at those efficiencies of the materials that we are using, so that we can actually make it last a lot longer. And yes, there is a bit more of an upfront cost to sustainability, but it's sustainability in itself and it makes it last. So the fact that it will last a lot longer with one type of material over another type of material, or the fact that some people may not like a type of board that's being put up rather than another type of board that could be a bit more flash or whatnot, but you're not really going to be seeing it anyway. It's great to see that there are, what's the word? I've forgotten the word. But anyway, it's great to see that there are cost efficiencies being fixed into this that are making it last and actually making it work well. Yeah, I agree as well that there are the people who are wanting the details are going to be the ones who are going to be scrutinizing every dollar, even though we're trying to do the best to scrutinize that every $10 or whatnot as well. It's a big thing. We need to support the staff, and the fact that they're there to do the job for the people of Whangarei as well, is if you support your staff, you get a lot better out of them. If they have to walk across a few blocks, it doesn't make it as efficient. When people can actually turn up to one location, it's so much easier, so that you're not turning up to say, oh, I need to come here for a meeting. You're over there. So there's so many more efficiencies. Just looking at the two options as well, absolutely need an update for what we can provide in the total cost in Civic Centre, and adopt the projected total cost. Well, you can almost look at that and say, well, to project total costs will not be seen until they're actually here. So we could almost say that we could say adopt that, because it's not going to be actually stable down until it's here. But at the same time, I also see that it is limiting ourselves in this environment is one of those areas that, as we've heard, would be shooting ourselves in the foot to complete this project. So, yeah, supportive of number one, cautious on number two.
Councillor Golightly.
Sorry, I know I've already spoken, but I'm just after sort of listening to everyone, and I completely, absolutely support Councillor Deeming and Councillor sort of Cutforce in this project. But I am going to support both parts of this recommendation.
Your question is, you have already spoken. So you may ask a question.
What word was it?
Do you want to know?
Could number two be put in a way that it's almost like there's a boundary in place, like the adoption of the projected costs? Could it be seen like it's more of a boundary? See my open-ended question? Thank you.
Won't be more than 100 million.
A notice of motion can't be amended, so it is as it's written, so it cannot be amended. Councillor Whangarei?
Am I allowed to speak, Madam Chair, or?
You may indeed.
Okay. First question for you though is in relation to item 1, which is request staff to provide a written update. What is the written update? Is it a public one or is it confidential?
Public, hopefully. I think that's what we're after.
Just give less information.
So it's not stated in the notice of motion, but we would assume it's public. Just off the top of my head, the way we would most likely to do that is to just include it within the operational report that's prepared every month.
Okay, so Madam Chair, the reason I'm asking this question is the next part of that question. It says on the projected total cost of the Civic Centre. So how do we write something to the public out in the public area without actually knowing what the projected total cost is going to be? And since we've already given a budget to say that it's going to be 48 million, how do we do that?
My understanding will be that the reports, the regular reports, will give updates on what those projected costs are, and rather than locking something in, which is why I'm suggesting that if it is a regular report, it will show what the projected total costs are.
Madam Chair, in relation of fair tendering process, how do you publicly go out stating what the costs are going to be if you're still going through a tendering process for each part of the contract?
Another good question.
How do you do that confidentiality without actually allowing another contractor to know what the price is?
There's a good challenge for our staff to be writing reports that don't breach confidentiality, I'm pretty sure. Alan, did you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Worship. They're very conscious of the issue about maintaining our negotiating ability while meeting this. What I can say is the council advised on the cost back in June with contingency. We're still working within that envelope. But what I don't want to do, I can still talk about the projected total cost. I don't want to break it out between the contingency and the actual amount, because that effectively is an invitation to tender to use the contingency. So with those provisos, I think I can accommodate what council wants without compromising our ability to minimise the costs.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that being said, Madam Chair, I'm going to actually state quite clearly I'm going to oppose both items because I don't believe that it's actually fair from a tendering process and from a staff's process to go out for tenders fairly when we're asking our public to turn around and our contractors to turn around and give us the best, cheapest price that they can possibly give us because it is a civic building. Because it is their building, and we've already got a budget which we have set of $48 million. We have set that. And I'm sick and tired of going out there with projected costs, like what was happened with the Ruku. Estimates. I don't want that. We've told the public 48 million. That is what the figure is. I want it to come under that. When I run jobs, that's exactly what happens. When I was doing project management, that's exactly what was happening. And you went out of your way to try and do it, and you negotiated with the subcontractors to try and give you the best outcome for the price. I don't believe the staff can do number one, and I definitely don't agree with number two.
Councillor Holmes.
Yes, well, if it's such a good project, why is everyone so defensive? You know, look around here, everyone's defined. It's been defined that we're building a civic centre. We all know the details and why we're doing it. And yes, it'd be great to have all the staff in one building. We all know that. That's not the issue. I congratulate Councillor Cooper for actually bringing it into the open meeting. Because everything we talk about is confidential. You know, the public, this building is fully funded by our ratepayers. They've got a right to know what's happening. Speculation is down for a lot of things. Speculation and rumours can bring a lot of things down. Why wouldn't we front foot this and actually say, this is where we are, this is how we're doing, that's the budget we're working to, etc., etc. What is wrong with that? It's just such a simple request, and yet we've got a councillor who has to put a notice of motion in there to have this addressed. You know, on all the major projects, we just completed a water treatment plant. We got regular updates in the chamber of what we're doing. We actually added more money to the budget to add more things back into the project, more components back into the project, but we approved. The public, the public out there, they don't give two hoots about our civic centre building. It's just another council office as far as I'm concerned, but it's a big thing in this chamber. But they've got a right to know what's going on, and I fully support the notice of motion, because just remember a bit of history. Only 2 years ago, we went to the public and said this was going to cost $37 million. Just before the election, it was announced $37 million. And just after the election, we put a budget up to $48 million. And so there's quite a few questions arise out of that. But that's history. We've already done it. But, Councillor Reid brought up some really good points. You can't, we know there's a fluctuating market out there. We know procurement's really hard on things now. But at the same time, it's affecting everyone out in the community. They understand how hard it is, but to hide things away and then right at the end drop everything on our public, unsuspecting public, is the wrong thing to do. Thank you.
Any further debate? Everybody's probably spoken. Councillor Lee, Councillor Martin, did you?
We have already had regular updates. We can't give all of the information to people when there's confidential tenders and prices between different businesses. It has to be kept confidential. And that's what the contractors always ask when you do these contracts. No one can predict exactly what the cost is going to be, because this was not a design build with a cost. It's been run under a different system. So the cost, especially with the scope changes, the inability to get the materials we need and the change in size has had to have had an effect on this. And while negotiations are going on, and we have the meetings in confidential to explain what's happening, we need to keep it in-house until especially the contracts, because we have confidentiality clauses when we go out to tender. So it's important that we keep things under control. But I do think we need to have a proper comms going out to the public to let them know what's going on and what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much. There seems to be some sort of misunderstanding, and I'll read out the motion again. I wanted to request staff to provide a written update on the projected total cost of the Civic Centre. Nobody's asking to know what the individual tenders are or the individual contracts. It's a projected total cost. And a number of people around in the chamber have said that they've got no problem with that. It is absolutely normal practice when you're running a project to update the projected costs as things come along. And I can imagine some of the people that are watching this being terribly worried now, because what we have is some elected members wanting to keep it quiet altogether. We've got people saying we don't know what the costs are. We've had people on the control group saying that yes, the area costs are going up by 27%, but you know, and across the industry, and it's funny times. To not run an updated project total cost is, in my opinion, irresponsible. So we should do that, and I would expect the support of the members in that. Point 2, adopts the projected total cost of the Civic Centre as the official budget for the Civic Centre. If the projected costs at the moment are above that of the adopted budget that we have at the moment, which is $48 million, then to just say, well, we'll leave it open-ended because we don't know. I mean, can you imagine if people go to our head engineer and say, well, you want that water main buried down Water Street? We don't know how much it's going to cost, but we'll just send you the bill at the end of each month.
Point of order.
I'm just asking people to imagine.
Point of order, the staff and the councillors have already approved the budget of 48 million. We cannot start talking about projected costs when we've only approved 48 million for the project. That is it.
Councillor Cockerello, your point of order is that the point that Councillor Cooper was making around you know, an open-ended budget, I agree. It is not appropriate, Councillor Cooper, to say that this is an open-ended. It is not. It's not. It is contracted. So that I'll rule on that point of order that Councillor Cockerello is correct in that.
Well, I was asking actually people to imagine if the council engineer over there, Simon Weston, had that situation. And I believe, despite what you say, Your Worship, that without the discipline of the budget...
Well, he's having a right reply.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Without the discipline of a budget and the rigours and the oversight that brings, you are asking for trouble. And it's only, it's a projected cost and a budget. Everybody understands a budget is strictly a budget. It's not the actual cost, but you have to have something to work to. You have to have a target. The people expect us to have that discipline. When you're spending public money, they absolutely expect. It's not like your own money. If you want to go out and just do whatever, fine. But this is public money. And we are expected to have a budget, and we're expected to have oversight of it, and we are expected to hold people to account. If we want to give that away, fine, but I'll be calling for a division on both parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickock. So I will put the first part of the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Golightly, Cutforth, Deeming, Penny, Cooper, Martin, Pulse, Reid, Murphy, Peters, Connor, and Her Worship the Mayor.
Who's against?
Councillor Cockerello.
It's carried. And for item 2, please raise your hands in support.
Councillors Golightly, Benny, Cooper, Pulse, and Peters.
Those against?
councillors Cutforth, Deeming, Cockerillo, Martin, Reid, Murphy, Connor, and who worships the Mayor.
Second part is lost. Brings us to item 7.3. The notice of motions is actually my notice of motion, and I will be moving that that council confirms Forum North as the site for a new performance theatre in accordance with Project 25 in our 2020 Momentum document. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Golightly is seconding. Councillors, I've moved this. I also took the liberty of taking a copy of the page in the 2020 Momentum that refers to item 25 in this document. Here it is in the bigger version, and you'll see that item 25. Now, 2020 Momentum was created back in, gosh, when was it adopted? I can't remember. Councillor Hobbs will be able to remind me. But it does have a total of 46 projects in it, and of these, many have been completed. If I go through, I was looking at the back page in the Parihaka Interpretive Centre, you'll see the photograph of the patu that was put in place some time ago. The Northern Events Centre was completed in 2010. My Crystal Beach is a future project. Might one day I'll be able to sit on my Crystal Beach on grass. The Emerald Necklace projects, which are being forecast. So there are numerous projects in here that were completed. The Whangarei Aquatic Centre. So it's a combination of projects that were dreamt about, and projects that are still being dreamt about, and projects that have been completed. So item 25 in this document is a future project, and you'll note that it's a council/private/community project, and it is for the redevelopment of the Forum North site, which would see the establishment of a larger arts and cultural presence in the city centre. This development will also facilitate greater synergies between performing arts, cultural activities and local business, and help frame the southeastern edge of the city centre around Lower Bank and Vine Streets. Key existing facilities such as the library and theatre would be integrated into a vibrant centre. A second element of this project is a purpose-built conference expo centre, taking advantage of the proximity to car parking and public transport, with outstanding views of Kefla Park and surrounds. These projects would be undertaken in a partnership between council and other providers. Major construction works are anticipated to begin in 2021. When? Council has allocated funding for a new theatre in the long-term plan. So after the debate with our community around the Oroku Landing project, and of course that was also a project that was contained within here. I'm going to try and find that one, because that, I think part of the debate at the time was highlighting the fact that that site was for, it's called Basin View Accommodation, and it was a private development, and looking at the large riverside site opposite the Sculpture Park, allowing for development of a privately funded residential development which could include tourist accommodation. As you know, the debate around that was lively, and that project didn't proceed, so I'm hoping that maybe the vision for that site, going back to accommodation and hotel or tourist accommodation, could be reinvigorated. It also, while I'm on this page, it includes the new marina, and again, that was 2020. So great plans, sometimes the time frame slips. But I really want to confirm for our community that this is the site for a new performing theatre. When the town hall was lost to our community back in the 70s or 80s, we've been waiting for a new facility for our people since then. And there was a time when there was hoped that perhaps the Oroku Landing project could have accommodated some of those desires from the community. But a lot of the submissions that came back at the time from the community were actually come back home to Forum North, which is where we are anticipating. There's long been held vision for a larger theatre on this site to complement Kapatan River. to complement the conference and events centre that we currently have. And you'll also be aware that there are future plans that could be developed on the site, which could be part of an education precinct as well. Whatever happens there, I think it is important for our community to confirm that this will be the site for a performance theatre. Some describe it as a lyric theatre, and what this will do is enable a community group to be certain that their plans, their hopes and dreams for the site could perhaps be met. They could go out and seek external funding, as the Founders Theatre in Hamilton, for example, sought trust funding, and I believe that's about to be completed. So I think that the reason I've brought this today is just so that we can have some certainty that we're going back to the future, going back to the commitment that we have made already, and we can honour many of the commitments that we've made through over time, that this will be the home for a larger theatre and other exciting things as well. I will open it up for debate. Oh, God, it's Murphy.
You know, it's really, I support the motion. This is the place. I can see it already, and not now. You know, like when we had the Urugu debate, we talked about the cost on our ratepayers at this time. But as the Mayor has said, this would be a partnership. Council would just be probably a part funder of such a development. There would be other funders that would be able to be brought into the project. But I think for me, what I get really excited about is, you know, you've got the space, you've got Captain Bougainville, it's so close to town, but also in the future, and everyone laughs at me when I say this, but the cool thing about Whangarei, because we are a long, kind of skinny city, we're a city, and we have a railway track that runs all the way through the middle. And I know that one day, I don't know when, it might be 20, 30 years, there will be rail coming back and forth, and people in Hikarangi hop on a train, and they'll end up right here at Four North, and then same the other way. So this is a central hub point. We're going to have our civic centre, and it was interesting to see the date here for 24, which was that we were hoping at that time that the civic centre would progress in 2016. So yeah, we're probably 6 or 7 years behind there. But yeah, no, I think it's great. Oh, sorry.
That's the go line.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I 100% support this. I'm really excited about it. Can't wait. And just this morning, I mean, we had these guys from Questionable Research Lab. I mean, what an amazing, facility that is going to accommodate people like that. So it's win-win. So I hope everyone will support this.
Any further debate? Councillor Peters.
I also support this, and I think that with the other potential future elements, like the people who were speaking this morning, but also the other educational, arts educational precinct idea, I think that's a really good one. I have one question, and that is the confusion I have around, initially I understood there was $10 million put aside for this project, and then I hear $8 million. Which one is it?
Councillor Peters, from memory, we have a line item in our 10-year plan for year 8, I believe, for an upgrade for Forum North. And I don't recall the sum. We need to look it up. But it is a good point that there is budget for the refurbishment of Forum North, but it is outside the scope of this term of council. And I would imagine that the next council will review their long-term plan and likely, once understanding more about the project, we'll be able to budget for that.
And so one of the reasons I do support this is that it has already potential partners.
Thank you. Councillor Peters. Councillor Connell.
couple of questions. First off, with this recommendation, it doesn't give a specific time frame as to when it's to start, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So it's really just working alongside with what we have in the LTP, long-term plan, and allow them to have confidence for planning. Yeah, just a question on that, just because it says in accordance with the 2020 momentum and it says 2021 on here, so I thought I'd just ask that point. One other question as well is, do we have plans, obviously when the council moves from this building to the Civic Centre, what are the plans? Do we have any set plans, or what are the plans with this building up until that point in time that it does eventually change into this, if it goes ahead?
So it would be fair to say that we are currently looking at a condition assessment of this facility, and that will inform what can happen, and there may be some potential partners who wish to join and use the site, but that's not set yet, but those discussions are being held.
Just on further on that one, is Questionable Research Labs able to be part of maybe that discussion? Obviously I can't say anything, but it'd be
couldn't answer that today. Rob's found the answer to Councillor Peters' question around the budget.
So, through you, Madam Chair, there's $10 million from years 5 to 8 in the long-term plan for Forum North improvements, which is this building as it stands. And then there is a further $6.3 million of seed funding for the Lyric Theatre in years 7 to 10.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Worship. I had hoped to second your motion, but unfortunately Councillor Deeming distracted me and little go-lightly got in before me. Anyway, I'm really pleased to see this recommendation, because I think, well, we saw particularly around the Oruku debate, the number of people who actually sort of asked quite sort of innocently, but I thought that this site was going to be the site of a new theatre development. And I think the general public has always understood, thanks to things like the 2020 plan and others, that this is going to be the location of a new theatre. But I think it's really important for the Forum North Trust and for the general public, for the council to put an actual stake in the ground, if you like, and confirm this in a formal sense. So I'm really, really pleased to see this happen. And I hope too that it's interesting in 2020 that it was a future project for 2016 to 21, and I know a number of other projects have come on so almost over the top of this. The Hundabasa was a classic one, and then Oruku looked like it could be the other one. And so the project has sort of waited in line for quite a while, I think. So I'm really hopeful that the money that's in the long-term plan may actually, for what years 5 to 8 and 7 to 10, might actually move forward. And so within my short lifetime, we may actually see some development and some actual movement on the build of a new performance theatre here. I'm sure Councillor Holmes, who's been ably, I was going to say assisting me, that's probably not fair, I've been ably assisting Councillor Holmes, because obviously he's my senior, on this project on and off the last few years. So I think there will be general support around the chamber for this project.
Councillor Cooper.
Do we think it's wise to sort of formally lock something in when we really don't know what's going to happen in the next few months and years and so on? It's a bit difficult to predict things.
I believe that we have formally locked it in already. It's just reconfirming it.
So it's not really necessary, this motion?
It says confirms on as the site. So it is. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, Your Worship. And isn't it good to actually remind ourselves that we actually can deliver on a few things? You know, that 2020 document you held up before is a bit forward thinking, but it's amazing how many big jobs we've ticked off. And Civic Centre, 2021, right on target, I think. And all the people, I was chair of that committee, put that together. And so when we actually put the theatre option in there, Councillor Cuff and I actually had a few public meetings, and we actually got a whole lot of people in the room, and that, just the following, that was formally on after motion trust, we got a shared Shelton report that was based on the front of 4 North here to put a theatre. And Councillor Cuff and I, we had these public meetings, we were able to get $10 million put in a long-term plan, and pity we didn't see the support from those very same people who opposed Ruku, because they could have had the building built by now. So it was all set up for them. So one of the points I want to bring up is Councillor Cuthbert and I are presently on a working party working with staff and on the interest outside parties. We've got some interest in the building. And one of the key reasons why this here today and why the worship board today is we need to find a few working boundaries. So we've talked to some other parties about the future for North, what can we do and what can't we do. But we need some guidance, because some of those talks are going particularly well, and we don't want to have a hold up in time. And if we all work together and be open about it, I think we can accommodate some really good things around this precinct. And we've got some balls in the air, and we want to land in the right place. So, but this is the first step. This is going to go on, and so by saying, well, once again, in front of 4 North will be the place for the theatre, and we can build from there and report back to you hopefully a couple of months in the new year what the rest is going to be. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Councillor Dean.
Work together, magic words. And I absolutely support this, and I have the vision, the same vision that Councillor Murphy has of this as a civic precinct, which was what we envisaged way back in, I think, about my very first term in council, was that this would be the civic area, and if we've got an educational part attached to it, which we also envisaged way back then that just adds glory to the project. I think I totally support it. But I hope that we can make this a whole precinct so that we get the emphasis on the whole project.
Any further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Councillors, we now need to take a break. We've been sitting for 2 hours. So we'll come back to item 7.4 after a 15-minute break, please. So back at 11:15. Thank you, everybody. If I can get you back into your seats. Thanks for your timely way of getting back into the chamber for an 11:15/16 start. So we're up to item 7.4, which is the resignation to Te Area Strategic Partnership Standing Committee. There are recommendations. Councillor Holtz will be moving the recommendations, and he loves reading, so he'll read it out. And Councillor Peters is second.
Thank you, Worship. And a bit of disappointing we have to read this one out, but just one, the council has sent the resignation of Jade Coffey from Te Area Strategic Partnership Standing Committee. 2, requested the Mayor to provide a letter of appreciation to Jade Coffey, thanking her for her contribution to the Māori Te area. 3, note the process to appoint a new member to Te Area Strategic Partnership Standing Committee was undertaken by Te. And 4, confirm the appointment of Sarah Hawken to replace Jade Coffey as the Hubbard representative on Te Area Strategic Partnership Standing Committee. And those committee's terms of reference will be updated accordingly.
Just confirm that Sam before, please. And Councillor Peters is second with that, so Councillor Holtz.
Thank you. Just speaking to the, pretty obvious that it's disappointing that we've got a very successful person here that's actually pursuing her career and actually contributing to a lot of other council processes, and because of a bit of a clash in that role, it just meant that Jade's had to retire off this committee and resign off the committee. So I personally like to thank Jade for her work leading up to forming the standing committee and her work on the committee, and just wish her well in the pursuit of her career and the other avenues she's following from council. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Holtz. Councillor Peters.
I'd like to endorse Councillor Holtz's thanks to Jade. She is a sterling person who was involved in our council Te Area meetings, and she's particularly knowledgeable about housing needs and housing potential solutions for Whangarei, and greatly missed. I understand Sandra Hawken is also a very knowledgeable person, and welcome her to that meeting.
Councillor Cooper.
Very quickly, Your Worship, as a member of Te Area, I'd like to endorse the words that we've spoken about. Jade strikes you as a very intelligent person with a lot of drive and energy, and we will miss her, and look forward to welcoming Sandra on.
Any further discussion? I'll certainly make sure that I include those points in the letter of thanks to Jade, and I wholeheartedly endorse your comments regarding her skill and talent that she brought to the end in really good debating. So she's a loss, but I concur that Sandra is a really fantastic replacement. You right to reply, Councillor Holtz?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Put that motion, those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Councillors, item 7.5, you'll see on your desk there was an alternate, there will be on your desk an alternate recommendation for this item. We can distribute that. As that's being distributed, can I just ask that I'll wait till it's done. So this is for the establishment of a Housing Strategy Council Co-Governance Subcommittee, and the main change that you'll see, which has been highlighted, is the changes to item 3 in the current recommendations, and also a change to the recommendation of current 5. So there are some changes there. And Councillor, I would like to move one, that Council notes the request from the Te Kārearea Strategic Partnership Committee to establish a Housing Strategy Council Co-Governance Subcommittee. 2, agree to the establishment of the Housing Strategy Council Subcommittee, Co-Governance Subcommittee for the 2019-2022 triennium. 3, note the Housing Strategy Council Co-Governance Subcommittee terms of reference will be further developed and reported back to Council. 4, and this is where you'll need to write in these names, appoint 3 councillors, Councillors Benny, Cooper and Peters as the Councillor Subcommittee members. 5, notes that the 3 Hapu Māori Subcommittee members will be reported to Council. And 6, confirm the appointment of the chairperson will be made by the Housing Strategy Council Co-Governance Subcommittee at their first meeting. Do I have a seconder for those recommendations? I'll take Councillor Golightly as a seconder just because you're named in the item, Councillor Peters. So councillors, the agenda item covers the background to this, and you'll see also that the report that went to the Te Kārearea meeting on the 8th of December is included in our council agenda, and there was a draft terms of reference. But the reason that we've changed item 3 is because I think there does need to be some work around ensuring that those terms of reference reflect the purpose for the subcommittee and the delegations that it will have, and they do seriously need to be worked on, and issues around the chair and the membership and etc. So that is a work in progress, I have to say. And the reason that I've nominated Councillors Benny, Cooper and Peters is because they are the members of the Working Party who have been working on the housing group, and so they've already formed a bit of a team. So they, I think it's relevant that they are the members on the co-governance subcommittee. It will be up to Whangarei to bring forward the names for the Hapu and Māori members. They may not necessarily be members of Te Kārearea, but they will certainly be members of the community who have an interest and expertise in this area and can help guide the strategy. You'll note also that we have recommended that this will be the co-governance subcommittee is for this training. So with luck, the strategy will be formulated and adopted by either the committee or however they choose to do that before the end of this term of council. So that is definitely the intent for that. So I will open it up for debate. Councillor Peters.
I endorse all of these recommendations. I do note, though, for number 3, I am hoping that in the future, in the deliberations of the committee, that we consider changing the strategy to be an affordable housing strategy, because we have had pointed out to us in the beginnings of the discussions around this that we don't have a housing crisis. We do have a housing crisis of affordable housing, and that's what I feel that is needed to be addressed. Thank you.
Just a question, Your Worship. If the terms of reference are going to be reported back to Council, do we not need a date for that report back? Because I'm assuming, I'm assuming that until they're reported back and adopted or whatever by Council, then the subcommittee can't actually formally start. And if we've got a deadline of council elections, October 22, it's a very short time frame.
Yes, I understand your point, and it's a really valid point. However, it's kind of deliberately not there in case, you know, if we said February and we couldn't make it by February, then we're going against a resolution of council. So I'm comfortable that it will be worked on and will be brought back to council as soon as practicable.
Practicable. But okay, so just following on from that, but until they come back to council, am I right, the subcommittee isn't actually formalised?
Correct.
Okay. It's a very short time frame as far as concerned.
Yeah.
Okay, good, they'll work really fast. I'm confident with those 3 musketeers will get the little
we do 6 musketeers.
6 musketeers.
Thank you. There is something I want to say actually. This is I really support this motion. I think it's really exciting. Housing was identified as a priority for our community, and I think Councillor Peters is right, it has to be affordable housing, which is why, I mean, I think our pensioner housing is so critical, because it's set, our policy is set to make it affordable for people on lower incomes or the pension. I just did want to say something though. This is a challenge to Councillor Cooper, Benny and Peters, that when I was on Facebook, they'd put a little post of themselves sitting at the table, and the first thing that popped into my head was, oh, I thought this was supposed to be a co-governance group. And so I really, and I know that the terms of reference aren't set, and I know that they, you know, they'll take my wero and they, and it just, it is what it was, and I saw someone else that actually made a comment after that saying the same thing. So, yeah, co-governance, right from the start, it's really exciting, and this is something I really believe in. So if you're going to post any more photos on Facebook, make sure that all 6 of you are there together.
Councillor Murphy, I will note that council has a working group made up of those councillors. So what they're representing was the current situation, and now we are moving to a co-governance subcommittee, which will absolutely have.
Yeah, I just thought, sorry, through the chair, because of the timing of everything, I thought that was jumping the gun a little bit.
I think they made it clear on the Facebook page that it was the working group.
That was just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Wish. It might be a dumb question. Is there any reason, just after Councillor Peters' comments, that this isn't an affordable housing strategy?
This is a big confound.
No, we just forgot.
We've always been referring to it as our housing strategy. If the emphasis is on provision of affordable, I would hope that the strategy actually looks at other aspects of housing in the district. However, if that's the emphasis that the group chooses, that's up to them. Thank you. Any further? Councillor House.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I totally support the recommendation, but just a couple of things. It's really pleasing that Dakota area has made a recommendation to council. This is one of the first times it's done it. Referred to council makes it sense. So that shows you the situation with the committees are working really well. And the other one is with the housing policy, you know, we've gone through, and I want to say this because council Innes would have brought it up. He's been best part of 3.5 years trying to get through a public housing policy to allow houses to be built on Maori land, etc. And we haven't had as much traction as we'd hope. And hopefully this committee can actually look into the reasons why, how we can actually implement that and make sure the housing. But I certainly wouldn't put a name on any of the housing because it kind of stigmatises categories. And why would you do that? With housing strategy, you look at everything, and you know, like we've got pensioner housing, we've got the money in the budget to spend on pensioner housing, you know. So just make it really, really practical and get on with it, guys. So it's what I'm able to do.
Any further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 7.6. 7.5. District Licensing Committee resignation. Councillor Cooper is moving and Councillor Connor is seconding. Councillor Cooper, would you like to read what you're moving?
Thank you. Number 1, note the resignation of Mark Vincent of the listed member of the Council's District Licensing Committee. Number 2, request the Mayor to provide a letter to Mr Vincent thanking him for his contribution to the District Licensing Committee. Number 3, Note that the District Licensing Committee will not be appointing a replacement member at this stage. I move that and have nothing further to add apart from adding my thanks to Mr. Vincent for the role he's played.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any further discussion? I concur that I'm going to be writing lots of thank yous. I'll put that motion, those in favour. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 7.7. Come on, Alicia. The adoption of the Tikipunga and Whangarei placemaking plans, and I'm saying that with great emphasis because these are important documents, and it's really nice to have Alicia in the room to see this final step in a long and exciting process. Councillors, do I have a mover for the recommendations that are on page 50 of the agenda? It's Councillor Reid is moving and Councillor Cutforth is seconding. Councillor Reid, you get to read out your motion.
That the Whangarei District Council 1 adopts the placemaking plans A for Whangarei placemaking plan attachment 1, B Tikipunga placemaking plan attachment 2. Number 2, note that the Whangarei and Tikipunga placemaking plans will be reviewed every 3 years in support of the long-term plan. Number 3, authorises the Chief Executive to make any minor amendments to the Whangarei or Tikipunga placemaking plans.
And we have a seconder in Councillor Cutforth. So, Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Something that the Council and particularly a revered staff member or two have spent an awful lot of time and effort sweeping over this, I should imagine. It's great to see that we've got plans that have come together and not before time. And I look forward to us furthering into other areas in the district.
Councillor Reid. Any further discussion? Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up, actually, because this is a really big deal for Whangarei. Councillor Martin understands, and actually, Her Worship, the Mayor was at a meeting, I think, was it an LTP meeting or an annual plan meeting? There was a really good turnout, and this plan was something that the Whangarei community really wanted, and I just want to thank staff and also council, because when staff came with a list of recommended areas that we could look at, we did end up selecting Whangarei along with Tikipunga ahead of some other recommendations. And I actually think, looking back now, it did make sense because Tikipunga and Whangarei are actually, they're aligned, they're close together, and it was a pilot, and it's been an amazing process. So I just wanted to point out a few things. I just wanted to say thank you very much to the staff, because a lot of the process was actually during the lockdowns, and so I know a lot of the consultation and meetings that they had planned had to be rearranged and readjusted. But thank you very much through the chair. I just want to say it's a big deal for Whangarei, because what it's meant is that the eye of council has come in to Whangarei to look over, all the other things that are happening there. So it's really special. And before I came into council, I didn't really know Whangarei that well. I live in Whangarei. Councillor Martin is Whangarei, and for me it's been a really cool process, getting to know the community, getting to understand the community, you know, and their priorities. And I think that the plan actually captured so well the priorities that were identified. So we've got the 3 key outcomes identified in the plan there. Whangarei is a destination, the connectivity within Whangarei, and the heritage and character, which actually make it really special and unique, and it is such a cool little place. I just wanted to say, so yesterday at community funding, we did allocate $10,000 towards a community development manager, so that will pay someone part-time just to help really advocate and help connect community groups to make sure that this placemaking plan stays alive, you know, and stays kind of current in people's minds. that's what we want, you know, all this work's been done. We want it to be a living document. And I just also wanted to say a couple more things. One was just, actually, I just also wanted to thank, I know this isn't just about the plan, but Hikurangi is looking really good, so I just wanted to also thank our infrastructure staff, because just the basics, when you drive out there now, things like the curb and channel, the vegetation control, the litter control, you know, things, it's actually starting to really come together and look good out there. There was one controversial area of controversy within the consultation process, which was around the Gomez Road water reservoir site. And so that's been a real learning process for me there. There's some historical issues that have come to the fore again, but the community group has been running a consultation about what the community want to do with that site. And that process isn't finished yet. So I did think about making an amendment, and that's on page 101 of the plan. There's reference in there to the Gomez Road site. I'll just turn to that page so that I can see what I'm talking about. So if you turn to page 101, you'll see there that the community investigate the development of a path or trail on council-owned land. And so it's a work in progress. The community is still figuring out what they want to do with that piece of land. So I just wanted to flag that once they've finished that process, that it may come back to council to kind of decide how we move forward with the management of that reservation. But overall, I just want to say, thanks again to staff. It's really exciting, and I can't wait to see Hikurangi grow and develop and become an even more funky place.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I just want to point out in 3 the missing 2, which was read out. To make, yeah. But apart from that, I like Councillor Murphy, want to really thank the staff, but also the citizens of Hikurangi and Tikipunga who have participated wholeheartedly in this process. I also want to endorse and possibly see as a model of what Councillor Murphy has mentioned, and that is that now there will be a community development manager following the process. When I came to council, that was one of the things that I was really interested in, and is the placement of community development within communities, within community groups like Hikurangi, like Tikipunga, to actually, or the funding of those within those areas, so that we do the plan, but then there's an ongoing development of that plan that capitalises on what we've done already. Now, I've had a talk to Sandra about this, and she also said that when they set up the community development section, that was one of the ideas that they thought it might morph into. So really just want to put that out as a way of making those plans continue to develop. So thank you again very much to the staff for their work.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, well, firstly, the feedback that I've had from Hikurangi was that Alicia and her team were friendly. So it wasn't just that they were doing their job, they thoroughly enjoyed going to the meetings. So I think that's an outstanding thing. Good on you. And that's true. So when I first got on council, and I know I'm getting to be a bit of a fossil, but it was nearly 18 years ago, and the main thing that they wanted in Hikurangi was a structure plan so that they could move things. And it's been an awful long time coming, and we've ended up with this plan. And it's interesting that the critical things that they wanted was activities and sports things. And the sports hub at the Park was the number one thing, which council is progressing nicely. And we've just got some funding to do a bit of a feasibility study on it, so that's good. But the other thing it's done, it's made a lot of the naysayers around who council didn't care, wouldn't do anything. And they now realise that it's worth submitting because they've actually had a result. And it's been an awful long time coming, but now they feel that things are moving ahead and things are looking up. So thank you very much, and all your staff, and it's been really good. And Tony Walton, who's no longer with us, played a huge part in doing this as well, so we must not to mention him. So thank you.
Might not be here physically, he's still around.
Yeah. See you in another form ago.
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Connor.
Being able to see these developments come through are big kudos to the staff and everybody that's contributed to them as well. I'm not going to go into long spiel like the others have. They've already highlighted a lot of stuff, but it's fantastic to see this happening and making it easy to be able to use and understand as well, and to see where projects are or may not be. But also even having in the back kind of understanding of what council actually does contribute to as well, like with all the different areas that council does do. One point that I just looked at is, depending on whether it's going to, there will be paper copies of this, but it'll be online as well. But depending on people using like a copy or using the links, the Facebook account on here, it's got Whangarei with the macron above. However, with Facebook, if you copy it to the thing, it won't actually directly to the page. I also see within the document that it is linked to the accurate one. So if you use the link, it will get you to the right place, but if you copy it, it won't. It's technology, it's what it is, but it's, I just thought I'd throw that point out there just for awareness.
Thank you for testing.
Yeah. But otherwise, well done.
Thank you. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, and I'll keep mine very brief. But pretty much thanks to Alicia and the team for what they've done, and it has been a really good process. It's nice to see that council working with the community for the community. It's a really good process, really good document. The challenge now is to execute some of these, and that's our role. We need to step up and make sure some of this happens. But really good, Alicia, and all you. So thank you for all your hard work, because it has been appreciated out there, and there's been a lot of positives gained from this.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I can remember, like Councillor Murphy, and I'm sure the staff can too, when it first came up that it was going to be just one area, and then it sort of became two, and the staff sort of bit their lips and swallowed their tongues or whatever. But and I'm sure it's been really challenging for the staff to take on two projects. But I think in some ways, and I haven't spoken to Alicia about this, but I wonder if it's actually been quite a useful process, because you're dealing with two quite different communities. Whangarei, a long established, big heritage background, and that's a real strength of it. And then Tikipunga, which is a community that doesn't have a sense of itself, if you like, as a community in terms of the confines that Whangarei does. That was developed originally as an oil refinery housing development with lots of key pay houses, and then into more sort of state affordable housing, social housing, and now with the huge development around Totara Parklands and then what's happening up towards where Rob lives, sorry, it's Vinegar Hill, yeah. So it's really a community that's been impacted by a lot of growth. So it's quite a different sort of community from Whangarei, and I think maybe the contrast might have been quite useful for the staff in terms of putting the projects together. So Tikipunga is an area I think where you're going to see some really skewed results in the future because of the new developments that are happening. So it's going to take it ostensibly out of being a low socioeconomic place to a higher one, but we've got to remember the types of areas within Whangarei that are not the new areas that are going to remain having some issues. The other thing about Tikipunga is, even though it doesn't have a sense of community itself, it's a throughway to, well, you've got the falls and you've got now Tikipunga home home of rugby, or, sorry, home of football, sorry, not rugby, football, soccer, football. So people know Tiki, particularly from the falls, but also it's a throughway to the coast. And I'm really looking forward to some of the connectivity issues that have been identified, being picked up within this plan. And finally, I just want to support what Councillor Peters was saying, because I think one of the things with Tiki is that the Tiki Pride group, which is a very small and sometimes quite fragile group, but many, many years ago actually employed a community facilitator, a community needs assessor, who did a lot of the background work that has fed into this plan. And it's from that you have the Tiki swimming pool, you have fun at the falls, you have the newsletter, those type of things. So that was what the community itself did. And then the placemaking plan has happened, and we absolutely, I agree with Councillor Peters, we absolutely need a resource from council, and I personally don't think it should come through community funding, though we have this time around, but council should be funding at least some base funding for people to carry on working in those communities on behalf of the organisations that are there to help implement these plans, because it's a lot of ask for volunteers to do that. And I think given that council has initiated this, then council needs to follow through in terms of some support for I wouldn't call it a manager, but it's certainly a community facilitator or coordinator. So I'm hoping that that will happen in the future. But yes, thank you to the staff. I'll make a comment. I hope that people will come back with this final plan to the meetings of the communities. And while there's a formal 3-year review, I hope that actually we have some sort of annual stock taking things are going to. Thank you.
Any further debate? Councillors, just the two plans, I love seeing the contrast between the two, reflecting the communities that they come from and the priorities that they have and the actions that they want to see. And it's really cool to see that the plans are what the community wants. And that way we've got the vision of what the community wants. So that was my only other comment. Alicia, I believe that you're coming toward the end of your time with council. I think having completed this work is a great thing on your CV. And we really sincerely appreciate the work that you've done, guiding it through, getting it through the rocky stages. But the connections that you would have made into the community are really important as well. So hopefully you can maintain those connections. So councillors, can I do the classic thanks to Alicia? Yeah. I will hand back to Councillor Reid, who put this motion forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to all staff who have been involved in this. Some of them are no longer working with us, but with great input. And Alicia, thank you so much for all your work.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Councillors, that brings us to item 7.8, the inner city business case and inner city conversion toolkit. We've got Tony and Hamish coming forward to answer any of your further questions. Councillor Cutforth is wanting to move the recommendations, and Councillor Deming is seconding. Councillor Cutforth.
This came to council in a workshop, and unfortunately, really, I thought the workshop sort of ended up focusing on a whole lot of other stuff that happened at the workshop that we had to deal with. And so the business case, inner city business, do you want me to read the motion?
I know you love to.
Go on, stop and start again. Right, the recommendation is that the council, 1, adopts A, the inner city business case, and B, the inner city residential conversion toolkit. 2, endorses staff to socialise the inner city business case and residential conversion toolkit with the public and private sector. And 3, authorises the Chief Executive to make any minor amendments to text and graphics of the inner city business case and residential conversion toolkit, including any pedantic comments on the paper. So, just starting again. came to a workshop, we focused on a whole lot of other things at the workshop, and this tended to sort of slip by. And I know the print is really small for some of the councillors here, but I really hope that people have actually read the document, because I think it is an extremely good document, and it is really interesting in terms of the conclusion that it draws. Because what it's pointing out is that there is an increased demand for inner city living and for smaller residential developments, that if we want our CBD to be vibrant and thrive, we have to rely on residents, because things like retail have changed so much that inner city, so the CBDs are no longer necessarily places where, destinations where people go to do their shopping. We have 432 dwellings in the CBD. I'm not quite sure where, because but we absolutely need, as a council, if we want to see vibrant CBDs, to encourage and actively encourage more residential development. What the business case also shows, and it's extremely good, it's very well, it's very analytical, that the best way to achieve that is by the conversion of current commercial space into residential units, rather than prioritising or expecting that new build apartments will achieve that, because financially that is quite difficult, and it certainly aims at a high end of the market. So it's coming up really strongly for conversion of commercial. Now, as part of the Spearhead group with Councillor Deeming and Councillor Reid, at the time post-COVID, when that group was set up, we actively went out and we talked. We talked to people who owned commercial space in Whangarei. We talked to some people who were interested in doing conversions or new developments. But what we got, or I particularly got, was that a number of commercial property owners were not that open to conversions. They were more interested in sitting, if you like, on their properties, waiting for something to happen. So my message today, if anybody from the commercial sector is actually watching, is please, commercial property owners, think again, because retail is not going to suddenly pick up in this town. You may get in the future small niche market type retail shops, but they're only going to exist if you've got people living in that area. And so for commercial property owners, we now have for you a toolkit that is really clear and really easy to follow, and we have staff who can help you navigate and negotiate through the genuine costs there are in converting. But really, this is the way that you have to go. And I'm hoping in the new year that the Spearhead group and the amazing staff who support us, our precious staff who support us, and Tony, we'll be able to work together in directly liaising with commercial property owners who maybe have been like not that keen when we talked to them in the past. Say, look, guys, because it is predominantly guys, we need to sit down and work through with you how in the future this is going to be viable for you, and how it can work for us too. Because at the moment, council gets a lot of the flack about, dead in the city, la la la. Actually, there's a limit to what we can do. We have to work with and have to have the support of the property owners. So I really urge councillors who haven't read it, have a read, and I'm also really pleased to see the toolkit being very practical and very simple to follow. So thank you to the team who have put it together, and thank you to the property group.
Councillor Deeming.
I think Councillor Cuthbert has pretty much said everything that needs to be said. It's just, I wanted to highlight that the purpose of the business case and the toolkit is to support Council's vision of residential living in the city centre, to add vibrancy and energy, and hopefully captive shoppers that will help support the business area. The intention is that this helps to remove barriers and impediments to commercial property being converted into residential area, and we have been asked for a very long time to come up with a way that makes it easier for that type of development to happen. And I hope that when the staff are socialising this with the community, that is, we've actually achieved what it is they're asking for, and a useful piece of work that they can work with.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Councillor Connor.
I just checked the paper copy, so this is just one point of, I hope that it will be fixed in whatever copy it is. Page 96 of the paper copy, page 99 on the electronic copy. Unless somebody has really keen eyesight, I can't even read that. It's all blurred, so I must have been transfer over, so I'm hoping that
Badge support change facility.
yeah, so I'm hoping that can get made sure it's clear, but yeah, it is, yeah. I think I can see it. But what my fellow councillors have already mentioned, absolutely, we need to be able to do what we can to provide an incentive for people within the community to be able to do what they can to provide a different type of system for a CBD that, well, retail isn't what it once was. That not everybody, a lot of people are now shopping online. Even with the recent youth survey where people are asking for spaces where they can hang out, which is maybe a mall, but that kind of provides a space where they can actually be, but also not be expected to kind of do anything as well. They want to be able to do what they want. But at the same time, they're also asking for food. So it's one of my main draws to the CBD, but if you can actually get people to live in the area too, it will definitely support the businesses that are in the area, because if they have the ability to do what they want to be able to do, they can actually get around in different modes of transport that are coming through that will be able to be supported, and really hope that it will reinvigorate and alive in the CBD. It's great that we are already doing this with the Complete Streets Master Plan, thinking about these ideas, and having this toolkit on hand as well is absolutely fantastic. So I give kudos to the team that have got here, to the staff that have got here, and all the extra work that is out there. And as much as people are saying, oh, why isn't the council doing anything about this? As we've already mentioned, there's only so many buildings that we're actually responsible for. And it is that partnership thing of, well, we can provide this service, you need to provide something as well. It's working together. I think it's a fantastic option, and I hope to read page 96 when I can.
Councillor Murphy and Councillor Finlay.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair, it's a really smart document. I think when you read it, you realise that they've considered, all elements. I just had a question on page, it's 71 in the agenda, and it's talking about the potential drawbacks. And there is a comment there at the bottom. I mean, I'm a massive supporter of everything that's been discussed, but they raise some really good points. So they say specific policy, I'm going so blind. Specific policy and design interventions are required to retain the benefits of having more people living in urban areas. So I was just wondering, would those policy and design interventions, do we need to build those into our future reviews of the district plan, or are they separate interventions that we kind of will do in tandem with the conversion? I'm just wondering how we manage that.
My understanding would be that those have been taken into account with city centre planning documents and things like that, but Tony may want to add.
Through the chair, most of the drawings from this report were informed by the various strategic documents that Tony Horton's team have read in the past. So it's based on the assumption that the city centre plan, core plan, precinct plans all exist, and also the operative district plan with now those around urban services. So if we were to change any of those policies, we would be cognizant of what impacts they may well have on what we're trying to do in this document.
Okay, all right. I think I see what you're saying. So it's more about amending those going forward, because I understand in this, and I really like this document because it does make reference to the Blue Green Network strategy, to, you know, climate change, you know, flooding risks, etc. But I was just wondering, so I think that answers my question, but I'll catch up with Tony after. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Peters.
Thank you very much for doing this, and I realise when I'm looking at the number of different things you're involved in strategy, that it is has been an enormous job, but that it is practical and aimed towards practically helping people, and of course that also can be an iterative process when people say this is better, this would have been better. That's really well done, and I take it that if you find that you're getting impediments to people doing this, you'll bring them back if there's something that council laws can do or change to make that more, if you know what I mean. You know, so if you bring it back to us, if there's anything that's tripping this process up, which is so important. So really thank you for all the work you're doing.
Councillor Peters. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I think Councillor Deming summed it all up when she said Councillor Murphy had covered most of the points. Since then we've had some good conversation. I'd echo my thanks to the staff and move the procedural motion and we put it to the vote.
There's been a procedural motion. Do I have a seconder for the procedural motion? Councillor Benny seconded it. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? No. I think it's carried. I think that's really unfair. Thank you. Anyway,
Quite rude.
I will put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 7.9. Disestablishment of Northland Event Centre Trust and establishment of Te Pai Taurima or Te Pai Tokedo. The recommendations are on page 136. Rob's covering for Cassandra. Do I have a move for the recommendations? Councillor Murphy is moving. Second. So Demi. Councillor Murphy.
So I'd like to move a recommendation that Council 1 note the annual operating grant for Te Pai Taurima or Te Tai Tokedo 2021-2022 is set at $646,620 and the rent concession at $39,000. 2. Approve the transfer of assets from Council with a carrying value of $101,878. $111,000. Sorry. 3. Note that divesting the assets will result in Council incurring a loss on divestment expense of $111,878. 4. Note that from 1st December 2021, all existing lease agreements with stadium tenants and revenue collected will transfer to Te Pai Taurima or Te Tai Tokedo. Number 5. Notes the resolutions of the Northland Event Centre Trust, which resulted in the winding up of the trust and the transfer of assets and liabilities to Te Pai Taurima or Te Tai Tokedo.
So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Murphy.
I think it's self-explanatory. I think it's the next step in the process, and I really endorse the new trust, and I wish them all the very best. And it's a brilliant asset. It's a very important asset for our community. Go to it.
Further discussion.
What is exactly that word Te Pai Taurima o Te Tai Tokedo? What exactly does that mean, and how is the 90% of people in Northland who don't speak Maori going to understand what that is? Are we going to have an English version of what that means, or are we just going to have that?
It's the name of the trust. It has been approved already.
It's a Does it mean Northland Event Centre Trust or what? I just want to know what it means. In English?
It means pretty much the Northland Event Centre. So Te Tai Tokoto is Northland.
Yeah.
Te Pai Taurima is that's the naming of the event centre. It's basically its name. Oh, thank you. Page 138, it talks about the it's in brackets, Northland Event Centre Trust 2021. It just distinguishes it from the Northland Event Centre Trust.
And my other question is, how much did the previous Northland Event Centre Trust get in an operational grant? So, you know?
So, Councillor, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I know that the funding that Council provided to the Northland Event Centre Trust was in the order of this grant that we've got now. In fact, I think it was slightly more. Because of the way it was set up, it was very difficult to distinguish between council money from council, because our venues and events team operated it and what the trust got. But what we did is we've tried to set this trust up to succeed. So we worked out the costs as best as we could, and then we gave that money directly to the trust, as opposed to having the staff working in kind and all that sort of thing that happened.
Councillor Martin, Councillor Hobbs.
I can speak openly now as a councillor, but I'm not involved with the trust, so. The answer to the question is zero. We didn't have an operational grant last year. Council, the year before, we did not have an operational grant. What Rob's mentioned is some of the correction the trust actually came to council 5 years ago to try and implement, and then it's taken 5 years to get to the stage.
So you refund them the money you get.
So basically, the asset transfer is basically what's being transferred from an old trust to a new trust to make it operational. It's been a significant amount of assets written off, and so this is the next step to finalise. But I must say that the existing trust, I want to thank Councillor Penny and Sandra Ward, our manager, to work through the transition period, because that was going to be done by a consultant, and we actually did it in-house, and we did it without time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Cockerell.
Yes, Madam Chair. Page 142 refers to all the assets that are being transferred. These appear to be just the movable assets, is that correct?
So your question is...
These are just the assets that can be moved around the place?
Looks like they're all mobile. What of your question is?
Well, that was my first part of my sentence. The second part of the question is, what about the rest of the assets in relation to the screen, in relation to the lighting, in relation to the building itself? Are they also going to be invested to this trust to be able to manage the trust and the building correctly?
Through Madam Chair, look, so these are the assets that our venues and events team used at the stadium, so that, and they are all the mobile ones. In terms of the building itself, Council owns and will do the major maintenance on that building, because that's what Council agreed to, and I'm pretty sure the screen and that is in there as well. So if you recall, the basis for setting up this trust was that Council would own the facility and pay the depreciation, the long-term maintenance and that, because that's the difference between making a profit and not, quite frankly. And then the trust would operate the facility and have all the operational assets, which are these things, and be expected to wash its own face, I think was the terminology we used. And that means that the trust comes in at an operating profit, but obviously doesn't have enough, doesn't need to generate the depreciation to replace the building when necessary.
How does this differ from the way Sport Northlanders do with Kensington Stadium, or Sport Northland does with the swimming pool complex?
So my understanding is that Kensington Stadium is not owned by council. I'm not certain about that. Right? Parts of it are. Okay. So I'd need to work through that. But with the aquatic centre, there's a fee for service paid to operate that.
Yeah.
We probably don't know that.
Through Madam Chair, are we creating a fair level playing field across all trusts that we're hiring our buildings or giving our buildings to?
Councillor, if you wanted to address those sorts of issues, the time to do that was about 2.5 years ago when we started on this process. Council made these decisions to transfer these assets 2 years ago, consulted on it as part of the long-term plan. These decisions are made, so we're just operationalising them. If there's a desire to do something similar for these other 2 facilities, then the appropriate place to do that is through the next long-term plan.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the CEO will remember quite clearly that I did raise those concerns back then, and I did quite clearly want a fair playing field across all areas so that one was not getting favouritism over another. So I would like him to rephrase that comment, please.
So I will rephrase it. There needs to be a majority of councillors who did that. Appreciate that. Often we make decisions, council makes decisions that not every councillor agrees with, but the fact of the matter is the majority of councillors did that. So I was talking in terms of council, not in terms of council, sorry.
Any further discussion? Councillors, I would like to thank the trustees who were on the previous Northland Event Centre Trust and the work that they did to transition us to this point. I think I join everybody in wishing the new trustees all the very, very best as they operate our facility. They have the sole use of the facility and they receive the income from the tenancies and hiring. This is a mechanical closing off of one, disestablishing a trust and formally establishing the new trust. Of course, the stadium remains to be named as Seminole Stadium unless they find another sponsor who can hopefully pay them some money. So yes, we wish them all the very best. Councillor Murphy, you moved that your way for comment?
No, I think you've summed it up. Thank you.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried. Item 7.10.
I'll move that, Madam Chair.
We do have a slightly amended.
I see that here.
Okay, so Councillor Whangarei is moving and he'll read out what he's moving.
Yep. Councillors, you've received an additional bit of paper here. It is that the Whangarei District Council 1 approves the proposal to temporarily close the following road and ordinary traffic for the Super Rugby Pacific Blues vs Rebels event on the following date in accordance with the Transport (Vehicular Traffic Road Closure Regulations of 1965, subject to the Chair of the Infrastructure Committee and the General Manager of Infrastructure citing the public liability insurance. On Saturday, the 5th of March 2022, through to postponing dates on 25th or 26th or 27th of March 2022. Okara Drive from the Okara Drive, Corrini Ave roundabout to the Okara Drive Court Road roundabout. Period closes from 9 AM through to 10 PM. And 2, delegates to the Chair of the Infrastructure Committee and General Manager of Infrastructure the power to give public notice of the proposed temporary closure, to consider any objections and to either approve, cancel or amend any or all of the temporary road closures if applicable.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Golightly, seconder.
Yep, Madam Chair, that is fairly straightforward and simple. It's referring to an event which, yet again, I do praise our team for organising and getting available for us to have. The only catch will be whether we will actually be able to have the event, depending on what this government allows for Northland. So, on that, I will leave it with that.
Any further discussion?
I think all I was going to say is like first we've got beam scooters and now we've got a super rugby match. It's like we're growing up.
Or something.
Or something like that.
Any further discussion?
It was anybody else ultra.
No further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Now the riveting. Item 7.11. Adoption of our annual report, and you'll note that there is also an alternate resolution that I'm happy to move, and it is that's the Council 1 receives the signed audit opinions for the annual report and summary annual report for the year ended 30 June 2021. 2, adopts the annual report and summary annual report, including the amendments tabled at this meeting for the year ended 30 June 2021. And 3, authorises the Chief Executive to make any minor editing amendments that are required. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Deering is keen on seconding that. I'm happy to second. Councillors, you will note that the item 711.2 does have the changes that, the amendments, I think, that were listed subsequent to the item going out to the councillors in the supplementary agenda, which is our annual report. And there were some changes, amendments that were required, and they will be incorporated into the final document of the annual report. Is everybody clear on that and what we're doing? So, this is the report for the financial year for 2020-2021. It finished in July, and here we are in December, finally receiving the annual report. And we all know some of the reasons why this has been delayed, but I am pleased that we've managed to get this through the end of the calendar year, as opposed to we would normally try and get this adopted before September or October of each year, but there was dispensation this year from government acknowledging the difficulties of COVID, etc. So the annual report is in the format that it always is, which shows all of the goals and targets and achievement measures that we set, and the reporting of those. And you'll see that all of our financial targets and benchmarks were met, but there were some of the non-financial targets that we were unable to achieve in this financial year, and the reasons for those are spelled out quite clearly through the document. And that's one of the changes, the page that says we met 51 of our 73 non-financial targets, and 3 were not measured. It was a phenomenal year. It was a record year of income and expenditure, both operationally and through the capital project. So can I commend the teams who actually implemented on behalf of our ratepayers incredible amount of work that went into doing what we did in that financial year. One of the other things that I noted was that the interest that we paid on debt was the lowest it's been for a very long time. And that's probably a reflection of interest rates, but also the tremendous amount of work that goes into swaps and all those really things that our finance team know a lot about, and we don't lose any sleep over because they've got it under control. The other points that I just wanted to make were that in the summary document, which is from page 235, again it just covers off the highlights, how we spent each dollar. The infographics that on page 236 of the printed version just shows how we invest each of our ratepayer dollar. And it's got some photographs of some of the projects that we've achieved through this that financial year. So, despite the fact that we didn't do everything that we hoped to do, we did have a record year, and I think we should all be proud of it. And the fact that we have signed it off finally, and we get to breathe a sigh of relief once it's finally signed off. So I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Cockerillo?
Madam Chair, I was just going to check will that also include some of the staff who have left may need to be changed on the document?
So
some of the staff who have left that may be changed on the document?
To what page are you referring?
Page, right.
Oh, I think it reflects the staff who were involved in that financial year. Yeah.
So just within that, okay.
No, it won't be changed because those are the people who were involved.
Councillor Murphy? Well, first of all, through the chair, thank you guys for all your work. Yes, it's significant, and I missed the briefing. I don't know if it was a briefing or a workshop, but I did miss that, which was a shame. I've got a question for the Mayor. In your commentary at the back, you make a comment, Your Worship, about our representation review, and it says, after the next elections, when we will have. And I just wonder about the wording of that. When we might have.
What, are you in the summary document? Or
I'm in the summary document, page 240. I was just reading it and I just glanced upon that. I thought I just would expect. We expect to have. Just sounded a little bit.
I guess it does reflect the decision that we made, which was to change the system. And you're absolutely right, it may change, but remember this is the annual report for what happened in that financial year.
It's 238 in the paper.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, no, I just want to say the other cool thing when you look at it is that we've spent the average of every dollar, we've spent 2 cents on libraries and reading, which is more than we've spent on like stormwater and flooding. So it just goes to show what an investment we make in our education, and I think it's great. Thank you.
I will have a think about whether or not we want to change the your message. Thank you. Councillor Connor.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much once again from one of the past meetings when numbers aligned exactly right. The little jump in the chair that our staff made shows that they have passion to what they actually do, and they are here to do the best for the people of Whangarei as well. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. And yeah, it's I mean, it is what it is. It's figures and stuff, but it is also relatively easy to be able to look through and kind of capture what has happened. So it's thank you.
I think you've pretty much already said it all, Your Worship. I think it's a great report. It's fabulously well set out, and the staff is still standing after all this effort, so that's pretty remarkable as well. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried. Councillors, we have a supplementary item 7.12, which I have. It's the Civics Precinct Landscaping, Contract Stage 1, and this report needs to be taken under urgency. It wasn't distributed within the 2 working days of the meeting, but the matter of the landscaping works would have been brought to council early next year. However, the timing of the upgrade to the stormwater infrastructure in Mothers Lane, scheduled for January, has led to this being brought to council earlier. Because the work's been done in January and we have no meeting in January, it is required to be considered today. And the timing, the pricing for the work only became available on the 10th of December, given today is the 16th, I think. And we can't defer it to the next meeting. We do need to address it today because the stormwater upgrade is due to commence. So I move that council consider item 7.12 Civic Precinct Landscaping, Contract Stage 1 at today's meeting. Councillor Connor is seconding. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So now, we move to item 7.12, and then the motions, the recommendations are who would like to move these. Councillor Connor is going to move, and Councillor Murphy is seconding. Councillor Connor.
Okay, so recommendations that council approves the contract Stage 1 Civic Precinct Landscaping Works to Can-Am Commercial Limited with Robinson Asphalt as the lead subcontractor with the amount of $1,430,237 2 notes that this is unbudgeted expenditure that will be funded in 2 tranches. 811,000 in 21-22 that will be offset by savings of other areas and project carry forwards, and $619,237 in 22-23 that will be provided for in the 22-23 annual plan.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. That's been moved and seconded. Over to you. Actually, just before you do, Councillor Connor, I apologise, but I'm just wondering if Alan could just reiterate again the purpose of bringing this to our meeting today.
Thank you, Worship. Most we're going back in time a little bit to when the original project was in the LTP. That was for an amount which was for a building of 5,500 square metres for 350 staff at a budget of $37 million. Back in February 2020, the project started at that time not knowing where the site would be. There was some debate going on, council meetings, whether it was going to be in the civic centre, city centre somewhere, or on the RSA side, or even somewhere else potentially. So there was lots of unknowns. But when we got into the project, one of the first things we came back to council and said we needed to revisit the size of the building based on staff numbers, because the population had grown significantly over that time, also had staff, and to clarify whether council wanted to house NTA, including NZTA, in the building as well. That led to the building scope, the project scope changing, increase in 45% in the building area we had to build, an increase in the number of people it would hold of 35%, which led to an increase in budget of 30%. And at that time, we were very clear that budget included only the construction and the base fit out, and there was still an item left on the table for landscaping of the immediate areas surrounding the sewer building, which this paper is about. But also I've come back to on several occasions to talk about whether we would like to develop landscaping for a wider civic precinct, encompassing the civic centre, the new library and the old library. And while it hasn't been officially ratified through the federal item, there's been general support from the majority council all the way through the process to consider wider civic precinct. Notwithstanding that, there are things we have to do for the civic centre with independence of other projects in the surrounding area. There's a water main that runs along Russ Ave, which is due for replacement. There's a stormwater running down Lovers Lane, which needs to be replaced as well. Now, while those projects could have been delayed slightly, that would involve sort of rework in the same space with a lot of additional cost a year later. So it makes total sense to bring those through at the same time. The other same principles in that category as well. Now, those 3 items have funding through the long-term plan, who budget rate for timing, but to get an orderly progression of projects which impact each other and are interdependent. And it's been a major logistic exercise working through that, but also working through how we can handle the contracting for that to avoid having to pay for the establishment costs for each project and implement general margins for those contracts as well. And the approach we've taken is to try and use the existing contractors involved in the civic centre and extending those for other contracts in the areas to save a whole lot of money we've been able to do. That in itself has led to a domino effect when the projects take place. So that's going on. There's also impacts regarding the resource consent for the civic centre, which extended beyond the footprint of the building itself. This is to do within the wider area, which landscape plans pick up as well. So there's all of those things to consider. There's also supply chain logistics in terms of where we get our hands on the full school upgrade, but also taking that approach when we've got resource availability. And Robinsons, who is engaging for this work, have booked up solid later on in the year. As well as that, if we were to delay the stormwater, once the roof goes on to the civic centre, we have somewhere for Hollywood storage to go. If we have to manage that on the RSA site, that will have knock-on effects on that program as well. So A needs to B, B needs to C, needs to D. So we brought this to you now under urgency. It's come late because the tender process only completed last Friday. I wrote the agenda on Monday night to get it as soon as we can for this meeting. That's why it's going to come through now, and that's why if there is delay in doing this, it has a major knock-on effect to a number of other projects with a lot of additional costs down the line, not the least of which could be having to extend our leasing further Walker Plaza.
Councillor Conley, are you okay that I just check a question with, so Alan, the tenders that came in, were they, as expected, the engineers' estimates, kind of,
yes.
Yes, okay, that's good. Any other questions for Alan before I...
Can I ask a question? Just to clarify that point, Alan, you said you're going with the, recommended to go with Robertson Asphalt, and it's got no detail, we've got no detail about the tender process you went through, we've got no other figures, so quantify the dollar savings, how can we judge that? We haven't been provided any other detail, figures.
That process is run by Can-Am, so it's the subcontract of Can-Am. So the quantity surveyor has verified those processes.
Your jurisdictions, we're the ones that make the decision today. I haven't got any tender price, no comparison whatsoever.
But from
it's unbudgeted money.
Councillor Hulse, I think Alan's made it quite clear that it is up to Can-Am as a subcontract. So from a probity perspective, we just need to know that that's been carried out appropriately.
The point of that is, what Councillor Holtz is saying, is that this is additional money. Absolutely. This is we've got a contract, which is pretty much what Councillor Cooper was going on about this morning. 1.5 million. None of the other contractors in town have been able to tender for it or price for it, and I know some of them are busted for work. And then we get 2 days' notice to spend 1.5 million on the project. It's insane for me. I'm waiting to be convinced.
Alan, is there any quantifiable additional costs that you can give us today if we didn't proceed with the stormwater now? I'm just conscious of...
Too hard to work out. Not immediately. And the potential knock-ons and the impact of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there were 3 parties involved in the tender for the subcontract.
That's good. Councillor Cocorello, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. In relation to the item, Alan, can you please confirm that this is actually all part of the original budget? Or is
No, it's not.
This is not part of the original budget?
Some budget.
But this is, technically speaking, the only reason we're actually going through this process is because it's has to be moved forward rather than actually be, because this would normally be under CAM's budget, wouldn't it? Would be normally, CAM would actually be issuing who the contractor is, they'd be doing all that part, would they not?
Again, to go back to the February resolution of the council, we're clear that that budget was for the construction and basement out.
Sorry, I'll rephrase my question then. CAM is in charge of the whole project, are they not?
Yes.
Okay, so this contract, the subcontractor will be issued, but will be under the control of CAM.
Yes.
So technically speaking, the reason why it's coming to us is, okay, yes, because of the extra money, but it's also because it's outside the scope.
Yes. Okay. But everyone's already doing work for CAM money, which is budget, which is the project. Example, power.
Councillor Cocorello, question?
Yes, a question, thank you. I guess what worries me is that this has come into us in a rushed circumstances, which indicates that it was not foreseen in a timely manner. And so therefore, how can we stop this sort of thing happening again? It's a sort of issues that people worry about when they want, some control, make sure the project is being run well. So how can we stop this happening again?
Through the chair, it's a very valid comment, and this is driven by the complex logistics and the timing of different projects. We're doing all we can to do that. We now have a much clearer program of associated things. But I don't know if this happening again.
Question, Councillor Murphy?
Yeah, well, my question, I mean, we always knew that this project, that there would be landscaping costs. So the comment, and I mean, and I support getting it done, absolutely. But I'm just trying to understand, so there's a comment there. As noted above, the costs for this project have not been included in the LTP because planning had not progressed sufficiently at that time to develop accurate budgets. Is there any other project that we've ever had in the pipeline where we haven't included the landscaping as the full, as part of in the long-term plan?
Through the chair, the new library?
Okay, what about the water treatment plant?
Are there additional costs?
I don't know. And the reason I ask the question is because I know that our organisation is so on the mark. Like we always build, what's the word?
Yeah.
Extra. We usually pay for everything, so I still don't understand why we didn't include it in the long-term plan. To me, it just seems really bizarre. But I support it because we need to do it, and it's going to be excellent.
Councillor Connor?
Question with this. On the point of efficiencies or timing and whatnot, you said that we received it a week ago, this project. How long before had we put this in to get done?
On that tender process ran over 3-4 weeks. It was received on Friday.
By Canon. So, no further questions, Councillor Connor, over to you.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things that, once again, it is what it is. It's not what we all wanted. It's one of those difficult things that we have to do, but this space is going to be one of those spaces that we bring the people to it. Having this fit well with what we already have in the area, the fact that we are going to be reusing bricks that will be melding in with the old library, the new library, the pathway down Lover's Lane, and just all the new little intricacies that will be brought along with this, that will be for the people. As much as we're doing the Civic Center and it's there for the staff, this is going to be a space where people will actually, the constituents, where everybody will be able to actually hang out and be, and it's providing bike parking around through there. It's giving us a stage that will have some very interesting artistic parts with it. The fact that they've got the seating underneath the trees that are there, which isn't currently there or hasn't been, which allow people to be able to hang out and actually be a space where people can actually be, is fantastic. The fact that it's working all in together, it's actually combining it. And the efficiency is as well, is what we need to actually be on top of. Because if we go and do something and we have to come back and do it again, have to come back and do it again, it's a real big pain. And from actually being in the contractor's side of it as well, actually having to do this, it's a pain. So the fact that we're actually getting this forefronted, getting it done, with the fact that there's a contractor on site, however their process went well, that means they don't have to remove a contractor to bring in another contractor to do the work. And the efficiencies that you actually gain with that, and the fact that the time constraints and whatnot with the money and extra that we don't want to have to throw in as well, it just makes sense. I mean, it's a big chunk of money, but it's a large area, but it's really being quite efficient with it too. It's being creative with the space, and one of the other cool things as well, that with the library, that wall coming down is one of the fantastic things that will open up the library to be able to be seen and actually work with the space. It'll be welcoming for people. As much as people saying, "Oh, there's nobody sitting in there," but you go for a walk through that park, that Capital Park in behind, and you see people sitting on the benches. You see people sitting next to the library up against the wall because there's not enough seating. This will actually provide a lot more space for people to be. The fact that we have the share path coming through here, the fact that there's schools around here that will be going past through, and it's an educational facility that will actually work well with our civic precinct, not our civic center, but the whole area. Whichever how you want to do, but
it's supposed to be a right to reply.
No, this is me. We have questions first. Excuse me.
You're speaking to the motion, Councillor.
Thank you. Nope, haven't done that yet.
We wait.
You haven't even had a chance to speak yet. But no, it's one of those things that if we don't get it right the first time, well, what are we doing? So we might as well actually get the things done right, efficiently done. I mean, the money's around the place; it can be moved to be able to be done. But if we don't actually get it right the first time, it's we really need to question ourselves. So the fact that it's here now, we need to look at it. We need to get it done, and I'll open the floor to discussion.
Open for debate.
I think it's all easy.
Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I think yet again we're put in a position where we have to do something because it's an obvious and it makes sense. As discussed in the question before, we should have more warning of this sort of thing, and as a group of governors we should be insisting that happens, and as these surprises come through we should be acknowledging that it's not good enough. However, we're in the position that we're in, so I will support the motion because it makes sense, but I would ask Alan, that we please, as you've suggested, make sure that we're not in this position again on this project. Thank you.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? In our commentary here, there's a whole lot of conditions on the resource consent related to landscaping. So we've got to be landscaping virtually about everything. It's in the resource consent. So why is it on item 2 that it's unbudgeted expenditure? We already had a requirement for landscaping under the resource consent. Why is it unbudgeted when we already had that in our resource consent to do that landscaping?
Because budget was set on before the resource consent was issued.
Oh, that's a big call.
Yeah. There was
no resource consent is the truth.
Couldn't budget for something.
Through the chair, this was the...
Was it a requirement?
It was a pretty serious question. I want a serious answer.
The council voted to proceed the project. There was still loads of unknowns, including the site. It was impossible to resource consent until the site was known. As soon as it was, we proceeded. The decision of the council was to proceed not knowing where you wanted this building. So there's been some challenges in getting it in an orderly progression as I would like to present to you. Right from the start of this project, it's been challenging.
I think I hear Councillor Holz's question around the resource consent conditions. I mean, obviously the resource consent conditions weren't known when we started the project, but I understand his question around the budgeting for what could be anticipated. We anticipating the landscaping around the project. We know that that's going to happen. I do note that there are budgets for water main replacement, stormwater replacement, the Lovers Lane Bridge, etc. But I understand the question around the landscaping as to where the budget is and which project. Yeah, I understand your question. I get it.
So the follow-up question, because this just dropped it down to councils with 2 days' notice, are we to expect a follow-up one for the rest of the landscape?
Through the chair, yes, the top of the 3rd page. So I'll bring back to phases 2 and 3, we'll come back to you next year.
Wait, there's more.
Again, these have all been foreshadowed in the workshop last week. This was the plans, but we're working on the basis. We can come back to you.
You see the point of Councillor Cooper's notice motion there, haven't you?
Which was carried. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against?
Against, the report, please.
Carried. Councillors, that does bring us to the end of the open portion of the agenda. And we do have an items in the agenda. So before I ask for somebody to move us into confidential, I just want to acknowledge that this is our final meeting for 2021. What a year. And I think this council meeting is actually probably reflected, it's a real little microcosm of the issues that we deal with throughout the year. We've talked about organised crime, we've had some really exciting young people who are building great futures for themselves. We've talked about housing, theatre, co-governance, placemaking. We've adopted an annual report, we've looked at inner city living, and we've done the approving of some landscaping for a civic centre project. So, yeah, can I acknowledge that it has been a fascinating year, a challenging year, and I want to thank all of the staff members who've supported the councillors and the whole team throughout the year, because it's taking its toll. So, I will now ask for somebody to move us into confidential. Councillor Whangarei is going to be, Councillor Martin is seconding. Those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Thank you to our members of the media, and also to our people who are recording, but we will need